You are not suffering because life is hard, but because you have not learned to govern your own mind. You keep measuring yourself through outcomes you do not control and through opinions that change without reason. This video is about returning authority to the only place it truly belongs, within your judgment and your choices. When you begin to trust reason over reaction, your life stops being pulled in every direction by fear and approval seeking, and you start living with steady inner discipline. If this way of thinking speaks to you, stay with this channel and subscribe so you remain close to teachings that keep your attention on what you can actually govern. We do not promise comfort here, only clarity and the work of becoming accountable to yourself in every moment you live. Number 1. Govern your thoughts before expecting your life to change. Before you ask for a better life, you must ask for a better mind. You keep looking at your days and calling them heavy. You call your work draining. You call your relationships difficult. You call your future uncertain. Yet the first place that needs correction is not the world in front of you. It is the mind that meets the world. A life does not change because the world suddenly becomes gentle. A life changes when the person inside it becomes ordered. If your thoughts are wild, your days will be wild. If your judgments are weak, your choices will be weak. If you let every fear speak first, then fear will sit on the throne where reason should sit. Do not lie to yourself about this. What dominates the mind will shape the man. You have probably spent too long hoping that confidence will arrive first and discipline will come later. It does not work that way. The mind is not healed by waiting. It is healed by governing. You do not become steady by admiring steadiness. You become steady by refusing to obey every impulse that rises in you. The moment a thought appears, you are not required to accept it. The moment a fear appears, you are not required to follow it. The moment anger rises, you are not required to become its servant. You are not the noise in your head. You are the faculty that can observe the noise and judge it. That is where your power begins. Look at your ordinary day. You wake, and before you have fully met the morning, you have already granted authority to worries that have not happened and insults that may never come. You carry imagined failures before the day has even started. You rehearse conversations that are not real. You punish yourself for outcomes not yet born. You live in a prison built from your own careless judgments. Then you wonder why you feel weak. A mind that wanders without order becomes tired before noon. A mind that feeds on fear becomes suspicious of everything. A mind that chases approval becomes empty even in a room full of people. Do not blame life for what your own thinking has allowed. Begin here. The first duty is not to conquer the outside world. The first duty is to examine the inner ruler. Ask yourself each morning what belongs to you and what does not. Your judgments belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your impulses belong to you only until you consent to them. The opinions of others do not belong to you. Their praise does not belong to you. Their rejection does not belong to you. The past does not belong to you. The future does not belong to you. The body can be weakened by age and illness and accident. The market can fail. The weather can turn. Another person can act without reason. None of this needs to invade your moral life unless you invite it in by surrendering your judgment. This distinction is not an idea for display. It is a weapon for daily use. Without it, you will spend your life reacting like a man pulled by every rope around his neck. Most suffering is not caused by events alone. It is caused by the story the mind tells about events. The event is one thing. Your judgment about it is another. A delay is a delay. A mistake is a mistake. A harsh word is a harsh word. But the mind quickly adds more. It says this delay means humiliation. It says this mistake means I am worthless. It says this harsh word means I must retaliate or collapse. That added judgment is where the suffering grows. Watch your thoughts closely and you will see how often you are wounded not by reality, but by your own interpretation of reality. This is good news because what the mind adds, the mind can also remove. You may not control what comes to you, but you can control the meaning you give it. That is not small. That is freedom. To govern your thoughts, you must first stop trusting every thought as if it were truth. A thought is only a report from the mind. It is not a law. It is not a command. It is not wisdom merely because it arrived quickly. Many thoughts are lazy. Many are fearful. Many are childish. Many repeat old wounds with new faces. The undisciplined mind loves drama because drama lets it feel important. It tells you to imagine the worst so that you may feel prepared. It tells you to imagine other people judging you so that you may feel special in your own shame. It tells you to dwell on what was unfair so that you may avoid what is required now. This is how a person becomes trapped while still believing he is thinking. Thinking is not the same as obeying the first voice that speaks inside you. Thinking is the work of testing each impression and refusing what is false. So when fear says you cannot speak clearly in front of others, do not answer with panic. Test the thought. Is it true that you cannot speak, or is it only true that speaking feels uncomfortable? Is it true that discomfort kills you, or is it merely true that discomfort exposes your weakness? Is it true that people's opinions rule your value, or is it true that your value depends on whether you act with reason and virtue? If you answer honestly, you will see that much of what frightens you is not danger but resistance. The body resists effort. The lazy mind resists correction. The insecure mind resists silence because silence forces it to hear itself. This is why so many people avoid stillness. In stillness they meet the condition of their own soul. Do not be one of those who flee inward examination. Sit with your thoughts. Write them down if you must. Ask what each one is trying to protect. Ask whether it serves truth or only appetite. Ask whether it is helping you live with courage, justice, self-control and wisdom, or whether it is feeding vanity, resentment, fear and softness. The wise man does not fear this examination because he knows that a life left unexamined will drift. A drifting life may look active, but it is not governed. It is merely carried. Do you want to be carried by impulse and called free, or do you want to be governed by reason and called strong? Choose honestly. You cannot have both indulgence and inner strength. You cannot have endless self-pity and stable character. You cannot remain asleep in your judgments and then be shocked that your life is confused. The mind must be trained the way a body is trained. No one becomes physically strong by one sudden effort. Strength is built by repeated resistance. So too with the inner life. You do not govern your thoughts once and then become finished. You return to the task again and again. You catch the false thought. You question it. You replace it with what is true. You do this in the morning before the world starts to pull at you. You do this in the middle of the day when irritation rises. You do this at night when the day is over and the truth can no longer be hidden by busyness. A man who does this long enough becomes harder to disturb because his mind has learned where to stand. Start your morning by refusing to rush into the world unprepared. Before you touch your messages, before you seek noise, before you ask the day to entertain you, sit down and inspect your mind. Ask what disturbances are likely to appear. Ask where you are weak. Ask which desire is likely to pull you away from right action. Ask which fear is most likely to flatter you into cowardice. Then remind yourself that none of these things can rule you unless you allow them to. You are going to meet demands. You are going to meet delays. You are going to meet people who do not understand you. You are going to meet your own laziness. None of this is strange. None of this is an argument against virtue. It is merely the material on which virtue works. Approach the day already armed with this truth, and you will not be surprised when it tests you. When you feel the first movement toward anger, do not call it strength. Call it what it is. It is a disturbance. It is the mind losing its center. Anger often pretends to be justice. It says you have been disrespected, so you must burn. But the burning does not prove your dignity. It proves your inability to hold judgment steady. A disciplined person does not become passive. He becomes precise. He acts where action is required and remains silent where silence is wiser. He does not let irritation choose his words. He does not let wounded pride choose his face. He waits one breath. He inspects the impression. He asks whether this anger helps him live according to reason. Often it does not. Often it only gives the lower self a chance to dress itself in righteousness. Do not let that lower self wear a crown. When fear says you will fail, remind yourself that failure in external matters is not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing is to abandon your own reason. The worst thing is to tell yourself lies so that you may feel safe. The worst thing is to become so afraid of discomfort that you stop acting at all. A person can lose money and keep his character. A person can lose a position and keep his dignity. A person can lose favor and keep his freedom. But if he loses the ability to think clearly and act well, then he has surrendered the part of himself that no one else can repair. This is why confidence must be built on inner rule rather than outer success. Outer success shifts. Inner rule remains available in all conditions. You must also stop waiting to feel ready. The mind will always produce excuses when it has been trained to prefer comfort over duty. It will say later. It will say after more certainty. It will say when others approve. It will say when the mood is better. But a life based on such conditions never begins. It postpones itself into weakness. Reason does not ask for perfect comfort. Reason asks what must be done now. If a task is right, do it. If a conversation is needed, have it. If a boundary is necessary, set it. If a harmful habit must be cut off, then cut it off without ceremony. The mind often makes too much theater around simple acts of discipline. You do not need a grand feeling to begin. You need a firm judgment. Once the judgment is firm, the feeling becomes secondary. This is how a person begins to trust himself. Not by repeating empty affirmations, not by staring into the mirror and trying to persuade himself with noise. Trust grows when your actions become dependable to your own soul. When you say you will wake at a certain time and you do it. When you say you will not return to the thing that weakens you and you do not return. When you say you will speak truthfully and you do. When you say you will not chase every desire that passes through the mind and you hold steady, then the self begins to trust the self. Confidence is not a gift. It is a record. It is the memory of repeated obedience to reason. That is why the strongest confidence is quiet. It has no need to shout. You may think your problem is lack of belief in yourself. In truth, your problem is often lack of honesty with yourself. You know which habits weaken you. You know which thoughts poison you. You know which people tempt you to become less than you should be. You know where you pretend not to see. The task is not to discover some hidden secret. The task is to stop betraying what you already know. Every time you ignore your own better judgment, you make self-betrayal easier next time. Every time you follow the lower impulse and call it harmless, you teach the mind that its word does not matter. Then you wonder why self-respect fades. It fades because it has been neglected. It grows because it has been honored. The inner life is not mysterious in this way. It is strict. If you want to govern your thoughts, then you must begin paying attention to what enters them. Much of the mind's disorder comes from what it feeds on. Constant noise breeds constant restlessness. Constant comparison breeds constant dissatisfaction. Constant outrage breeds constant agitation. Constant indulgence breeds constant weakness. The mind becomes like the food it eats and the company it keeps. You cannot pour poison into the day and expect peace at night. Be severe with what you allow. Select what strengthens reason. Reduce what stirs vain desire. Remove what feeds envy. Remove what inflames lust for approval. Remove what trains you to be passive before your own attention. The attention is precious. Where it goes, the life follows. Guard it. There is also a duty in your thoughts to choose the harder truth over the easier comfort. The easier comfort says that your failures are always caused by others. The harder truth says that while others may interfere, the final choice remains yours. The easier comfort says that your anger is justified because you were provoked. The harder truth says that provocation does not force consent. The easier comfort says that your weakness is your nature and therefore beyond change. The harder truth says that nature gave you reason precisely so that you may guide what is raw into what is noble. Do not insult yourself by assuming you are fixed in your faults. You are trainable if you are willing, but training requires patience and honesty. It requires that you stop being impressed by your own excuses. When you begin to practice this, you will notice a strange thing. The world does not change as quickly as your temperament. The same delays still arrive, the same difficult people still appear, the same duties still wait, yet something inside becomes less reactive. You do not surrender as quickly. You do not panic as quickly. You do not explain yourself as quickly. There is a space between impression and response. In that space, your freedom lives. If you can hold that space, then you can choose. If you can choose, then you can act in accord with virtue. If you can act in accord with virtue, then you can remain unbroken, even while life remains unfinished. That is not a small victory. That is the beginning of mastery. This is why daily practice matters more than dramatic emotion. The mind is changed by repetition. It is changed when you return to your principles after neglecting them. It is changed when you notice that you are being pulled and you stop. It is changed when you accept discomfort without complaint. It is changed when you refuse to dramatize ordinary trouble. It is changed when you do not permit a passing mood to define the day. The person who trains his thoughts in this way becomes less dependent on circumstances to feel stable. He does not need every moment to be pleasant to remain upright. He needs only the chance to choose well. That chance is always present. Practice a clear distinction every day. Ask of each thing whether it is up to you or not. Your opinion is up to you. Your desire is up to you. Your aversion is up to you. Your effort is up to you. The outcome is not up to you. The applause is not up to you. The timing is not up to you. The response of others is not up to you. Once you grasp this, you will stop wasting energy on the impossible task of controlling what belongs to someone else or to chance. Instead, you will pour your strength into the only place where strength matters, the management of your own mind and will. This will save you from a great deal of needless pain. You must also learn to endure silence without fleeing from yourself. Many people avoid their own thoughts because silence exposes how much they have been drifting. They keep background noise around them so they do not have to hear the instability inside. But the mind cannot be corrected while constantly distracted. Set aside moments each day where you sit with no screen, no voice, no task, and ask yourself what you have been doing with your judgments. Ask where you were weak. Ask where you were honest. Ask where you were ruled by appetite. Ask where you acted from fear rather than reason. Do not do this to shame yourself. Do it to wake yourself. Shame without correction is useless. Correction without honesty is impossible. At night, examine the day. This is not for performance. It is for discipline. Ask what today taught you. Ask where you moved too quickly. Ask where you spoke without thought. Ask where you believed a false impression. Ask where you chose comfort over duty. Ask what you will do differently tomorrow. This daily accounting keeps the mind from lying to itself. A man who reviews himself with honesty becomes harder to deceive. He no longer needs the day to remind him of his failures because he has already faced them. He no longer needs praise to tell him he is improving because he can see the pattern of his own effort. Such a man grows in dignity because he takes responsibility without drama. There is one more thing you must understand. Governing your thoughts does not mean becoming cold or lifeless. It means becoming clear. It means no longer allowing every mood to drag you. It means caring about what is worthy instead of what is noisy. It means recognizing that the true value of a human being lies not in how much he is admired, but in how faithfully he uses reason. A person governed by reason can love others without begging from them. He can work hard without needing constant recognition. He can endure hardship without turning bitter. He can be corrected without collapsing. He can be alone without being empty. He can be tested without becoming false. This is a life worth living. So stop telling yourself that you need a different personality before you can begin. You need discipline. Stop saying that you are waiting to become a stronger person. You become stronger by doing what the weak part of you avoids. Stop saying that your mind is just like this. The mind can be trained, not overnight, not by wish, by practice, by repetition, by clear judgment, by refusal to surrender to the first impulse, by loyalty to virtue in small things. The great life begins in those small things, when you choose not to overreact, when you choose not to lie, when you choose not to indulge the thought that harms you, when you choose to do the right work even when no one watches. These choices form the character that later appears as confidence. And do not wait for the world to reward this discipline before you value it. The reward is already here. It is in the calm that comes after you refuse a false thought. It is in the strength that comes after you do what you promised. It is in the peace that comes when you stop negotiating with your weaknesses. It is in the quiet knowledge that your life is no longer ruled by every passing disturbance. That peace is not given by fortune. It is built by the mind that has accepted its duty. You are not asked to control everything. You are asked to control your judgments. You are not asked to prevent every wound. You are asked not to become corrupt in response to them. You are not asked to eliminate every hardship. You are asked to meet hardship with reason. You are not asked to be admired. You are asked to be worthy. This is the standard. Nothing less will free you. If you hold to it, the life around you may remain imperfect, but your inner life will become ordered, and an ordered inner life can face almost anything without breaking. Remember this when your mind begins to wander into complaint. Return it. Remember this when fear promises safety through avoidance. Reject it. Remember this when anger invites you to act beneath yourself. Refuse it. Remember this when laziness tells you to postpone your duty. Confront it. Every return matters. Every correction matters. Every refusal matters. The self is shaped by such acts more than by any single event. You are being formed every hour by what you permit. Be careful then with what you permit. When the day feels heavy, do not ask first how to escape it. Ask how to meet it with a better mind. That question changes everything. It restores power to the only place where power can be exercised. It stops the leakage of energy into blame and fantasy. It pulls you back into the present where duty waits. A better mind does not mean a perfect mind. It means a mind willing to be corrected, a mind willing to tell itself the truth, a mind willing to choose what is right even when it is difficult, a mind willing to stand still when fear orders movement, a mind willing to move when duty orders action. This is the work. No one can do it for you. No clever phrase can replace it. No mood can sustain it. No applause can complete it. You must govern your thoughts. You must observe your impressions. You must question what enters the mind. You must separate what is yours from what is not. You must choose reason over panic and virtue over appetite. You must do this when you are tired. You must do this when you are unseen. You must do this when no reward is near. That is the path to a life that begins to change. Do not ask for an easier life when you have not yet become a more disciplined thinker. Ask for a clearer mind. Ask for stronger judgments. Ask for the courage to face what is true. Ask for the patience to train yourself day after day. Ask for the ability to meet the ordinary moments of life without surrendering to impulse. Then act on that request with consistency. This is how confidence is born. This is how freedom is earned. This is how a man becomes enough to himself. So today, do not merely listen. Decide. Decide to inspect your thoughts before they shape your actions. Decide to challenge the first false judgment instead of obeying it. Decide to return your attention to what is truly yours. Decide to begin the morning with order and end the night with honest review. Decide to stop making excuses for the mind that has been allowed to grow wild. The mind can be trained, the self can be governed, the life can change. But it will change only when you stop waiting for another force to save you and begin doing the hard work of ruling yourself. That is where your life begins to turn. Not in fantasy, not in waiting, not in praise, in the quiet and severe act of governing your own mind. Do that, and you will find that many of the things you feared lose their power. Do that, and you will discover that the person you were searching for has been waiting inside you all along. Do that, and waste no more days in surrender. The hour is now. The task is yours. The choice is before you. Choose reason. Choose virtue. Choose to be ruled by what is true. Then begin. Number 2. Trust your reason instead of fearing outside judgment always. You spend more of your life answering voices that do not belong to you than listening to the one faculty that was given to guide you. Before you make a decision, you imagine what someone else will think. Before you speak honestly, you measure the possible approval or disapproval waiting on another face. Before you act according to what you know is right, you hesitate because you fear being misunderstood. Then, after living according to the expectations of others, you wonder why peace remains distant. The answer is not hidden. Peace cannot exist where your judgment has been replaced by the opinions of strangers. Look carefully at the pattern of your days. You are not exhausted only because your work is difficult. You are exhausted because your mind has accepted too many masters. One person praises you and your spirit rises. Another criticizes you and your confidence collapses. A group welcomes you and you feel secure. The same group ignores you and you question your worth. This is not freedom. It is dependence disguised as social living. The person who places his inner condition into the hands of changing opinions gives away the only authority that truly belongs to him. You were not given reason so that it could remain silent while fear speaks louder. You were given reason so that every impression entering your mind could be examined before it is accepted. This is your greatest responsibility. Not every judgment from another person deserves entrance into your thinking. Not every criticism deserves belief. Not every compliment deserves attachment. The disciplined mind does not reject every opinion simply because it comes from outside. It asks whether the opinion is true. If it is true, then it becomes an opportunity for correction. If it is false, then it deserves no power over your character. Many people mistake confidence for the absence of criticism. They imagine that strength arrives when everyone approves of them. They wait for universal agreement before trusting themselves. Such a day will never come. Human judgment changes with mood, circumstance, preference, and ignorance. If your peace depends upon something so unstable, then your peace will remain unstable. The person who governs himself chooses another foundation. He asks only one question: did I act according to reason and virtue? If the answer is yes, then applause adds nothing, and rejection removes nothing. Notice how often fear of judgment causes you to betray your own understanding. You remain silent when honesty is required because you fear discomfort. You agree with ideas you know are unsound because you seek acceptance. You hide your effort because you fear failure being seen. You postpone necessary action because another person's opinion appears larger than your own conscience. Every one of these moments weakens the habit of self-government. Every compromise teaches your mind that approval matters more than integrity. After enough repetitions, you no longer recognize your own voice because it has been buried beneath borrowed expectations. This is why the first discipline is not learning how to impress others. The first discipline is learning how to examine yourself without deception. Sit quietly and ask where your choices truly come from. Are they born from careful judgment or from imagined reactions? Are you pursuing what is right or merely avoiding criticism? Have you confused popularity with goodness? These questions are uncomfortable because they remove every convenient excuse. Yet discomfort in the service of truth is far better than comfort purchased through self-betrayal. Understand what belongs to you. Your intention belongs to you. Your judgment belongs to you. Your willingness to act with justice belongs to you. The opinions formed in another person's mind never belong to you. You may influence them through honorable conduct, but you cannot command them. Trying to control another person's judgment is like trying to command the wind. You waste effort while neglecting the one task that always remains possible, the government of your own character. When someone criticizes you, pause before your emotions begin their familiar movement. Do not answer immediately. Ask whether the criticism reveals a genuine fault. If it does, then receive it without resentment because correction strengthens character. If it does not, then allow it to pass without disturbance because false judgment cannot diminish virtue. In both cases, your task remains exactly the same. Preserve the clarity of your own reason. This single pause prevents countless unnecessary conflicts because it places examination before reaction. Many people fear being misunderstood more than they fear becoming unjust. This reveals a confused order of values. It is better to be misunderstood while acting rightly than admired while abandoning virtue. Your reputation belongs to those who observe you. Your character belongs to you. Reputation rises and falls according to circumstances beyond your command. Character grows through choices that no audience may ever witness. Which deserves greater attention? The answer determines the direction of your entire life. You may remember moments when someone spoke unfairly about you. Perhaps they questioned your motives or doubted your ability. Perhaps they reduced your efforts to a careless judgment formed in a single moment. You carried those words for days, perhaps years, yet consider what truly happened. Their words entered your ears only once. Your own mind repeated them endlessly afterward. The greater injury was not their statement, but your continued agreement with it. You became both the accused and the judge within your own thinking. Stop renewing wounds that reality has already left behind. Reason asks for evidence before accepting conclusions. Fear accepts conclusions before seeking evidence. This difference changes everything. Fear says everyone is watching you. Reason asks whether that is actually true. Fear says one mistake defines your entire worth. Reason asks how one action could determine the value of an entire character. Fear says rejection is unbearable. Reason reminds you that many honorable actions require temporary discomfort. By returning repeatedly to reason, you weaken fear not through force, but through honest examination. There will always be moments when standing by your principles costs you something. You may lose approval. You may lose opportunities that depended upon pretending to be someone else. You may lose temporary comfort. Yet none of these losses compare with the greater loss of abandoning your own moral judgment. Every time you act against conscience merely to satisfy another person, you divide yourself. Outwardly, you appear agreeable, while inwardly you know you have chosen weakness over integrity. Such division cannot produce tranquility. Train yourself each morning before entering the demands of the day. Remind yourself that you will meet different opinions, conflicting personalities, unfair assumptions, and unexpected criticism. None of these events possess authority over your reason unless you surrender that authority. Your task is not to force agreement. Your task is to remain governed by wisdom regardless of disagreement. Enter the day expecting these encounters rather than resenting them. What is expected disturbs the mind far less than what arrives as a surprise. During the day, practice another discipline. Whenever you notice yourself adjusting your behavior solely to avoid another person's judgment, pause immediately. Ask one simple question: am I acting from reason or from fear? Do not answer quickly. Let the question expose your motive. If fear has taken command, then withdraw your consent from it. Return your attention to what virtue requires rather than what approval promises. This small examination, repeated often, gradually changes the direction of your entire character. There is another mistake that quietly weakens the soul. It is the habit of measuring yourself against other people. You compare achievements, appearance, recognition, influence, possessions, and success. Every comparison invites either pride or envy. Neither serves reason. Another person's path is not yours to judge or imitate blindly. Your concern is whether you are becoming more truthful, more disciplined, more just, and more moderate than you were yesterday. Progress measured against another person remains uncertain because another person's life never belonged to your responsibility. Do not misunderstand this teaching. Reason does not demand stubbornness. It does not tell you to reject advice simply because it comes from outside. Wisdom listens carefully. It welcomes correction from those who speak truthfully. Yet wisdom never surrenders the responsibility of examining what it hears. Advice becomes valuable only after reason has tested it. Blind agreement is no virtue, neither is blind opposition. The disciplined mind evaluates every impression according to whether it serves virtue. Consider how often people spend years building an image while neglecting the person beneath it. They become skilled at appearing wise without practicing wisdom. They become skilled at appearing calm while inwardly ruled by anxiety. They become skilled at appearing generous while secretly seeking admiration. Such effort consumes enormous energy because maintaining appearances requires constant performance. Character requires no performance. It requires consistency between what you believe, what you choose, and what you do, whether anyone notices or not. Your inner life becomes lighter the moment you stop treating every observer as a judge over your worth. Most people are occupied with their own concerns far more than with yours. Even when they do judge you, their judgment is shaped by experiences and limitations you cannot fully know. Why should something so uncertain become the measure of your peace? Let people think according to their understanding. Your duty remains unchanged. When disappointment arrives because someone failed to appreciate your effort, do not immediately conclude that your effort lacked value. Virtue does not become worthless because gratitude failed to appear. Justice remains just, even when ignored. Honesty remains honorable, even when inconvenient. Patience remains noble, even when unnoticed. If your commitment to what is right depends upon recognition, then your commitment has been placed upon unstable ground. Choose instead to value the action itself, because it reflects your own moral purpose. Practice deliberate silence when unnecessary self-defense tempts you. Not every accusation deserves an argument. Not every misunderstanding requires immediate correction. Sometimes the greatest expression of inner confidence is continuing your rightful work without becoming consumed by explaining yourself. This silence is not weakness. It is discipline. It demonstrates that your peace depends more upon living rightly than upon winning every opinion. Each evening, return to yourself before sleep. Ask where fear of judgment influenced your choices. Recall moments when you spoke less honestly than you could have. Notice where you sought admiration instead of truth. Observe without harshness but without excuse. Then ask what reason would have chosen instead. This nightly examination is not punishment, it is training. Character grows through repeated correction more than through occasional inspiration. You will discover that trusting your reason is not a single decision but a daily practice. Every conversation presents another opportunity. Every criticism presents another opportunity. Every temptation to seek approval presents another opportunity. The disciplined mind becomes stronger not because these situations disappear, but because it learns to meet them without surrendering its authority. Eventually, something quiet begins to change within you. You stop rushing to defend yourself against every opinion. You stop chasing praise with the same hunger. You become less interested in being admired and more interested in becoming worthy. Your conversations become more honest because they no longer exist merely to secure acceptance. Your decisions become steadier because they are guided by principles rather than moods. Even your disappointments lose much of their power because they no longer define your value. This transformation does not make life easier in every outward sense. Difficult people remain difficult. False judgments continue to exist. Misunderstandings still arise. Yet your relationship with these events changes completely. They become occasions to practice reason rather than excuses for emotional slavery. The world no longer dictates your inner condition because you have stopped assigning it that authority. Never forget that the greatest court before which you stand each day is not public opinion but your own conscience. Others may misunderstand your actions while your conscience remains clear. Others may praise conduct that your conscience knows was dishonest. Only one of these voices accompanies you into every decision and every quiet moment. Guard that voice carefully, educate it through reason, strengthen it through daily examination, obey it when it calls you toward virtue even if the crowd walks another direction. If you truly wish for your life to change, then stop asking how you appear and begin asking who you are becoming. Let reason become the measure by which every decision is tested. Let virtue become the standard that no criticism can lower and no praise can raise. Place your confidence where fortune cannot reach it and where public opinion cannot steal it. When you learn to trust the faculty of reason above the changing judgments of the world, you recover the freedom that was available to you all along. From that day forward, your peace will no longer wait for permission from others, because it will be founded upon the one possession that has always been yours to cultivate, a disciplined and well-governed mind. Number 3. Accept only what lies within your complete control today. Every morning, you awaken with a choice that most people never notice. Before the world places its demands upon you, before messages arrive, before responsibilities begin, your mind quietly decides where it will place its energy. This decision shapes the entire day long before any event takes place. If your attention immediately runs toward what you cannot command, then anxiety has already entered before the first task has begun. If your attention remains with what belongs to your own judgment and conduct, then you begin the day standing on solid ground. The difference between these two ways of living is not small. It determines whether your mind becomes a servant of circumstance or a governor of itself. Look honestly at how much of your daily suffering comes from demanding authority over things that have never belonged to you. You want another person to understand you exactly as you intend. You want every plan to unfold without interruption. You want the future to reveal itself before you must act. You want people to reward your effort fairly every time. You want fortune to protect you from disappointment. Yet none of these things have ever submitted themselves to your command. They never promised to obey you, yet you continue to expect obedience from them. Then, when they follow their own course instead of yours, you call life unfair. The disciplined mind refuses to make this mistake. It begins every situation by asking a single question: what truly belongs to me in this moment? That question immediately removes confusion because it separates responsibility from fantasy. Your response belongs to you. Your judgment belongs to you. Your willingness to act honorably belongs to you. Your patience belongs to you. Your honesty belongs to you. Your effort belongs to you. Everything beyond these must be approached with acceptance rather than possession. Most frustration begins the moment you confuse influence with control. You may influence another person's thinking through kindness, honesty, and example, but you cannot command agreement. You may prepare carefully for an important opportunity, yet you cannot guarantee its outcome. You may care deeply for those around you, yet you cannot prevent every hardship that enters their lives. To expect complete authority over these things is not strength, it is self-deception. The wise person works faithfully where influence exists, while remaining peaceful where control ends. Notice how often your emotions rise before your reason has examined the situation. A delayed reply becomes proof that someone no longer values you. A single obstacle becomes evidence that the entire day is ruined. An unexpected change becomes a reason to abandon your composure. None of these conclusions come from reality itself. They come from a mind that has forgotten to separate events from interpretations. Events arrive without opinion. Your suffering begins when you attach unnecessary judgments to them. You have spent years rehearsing disappointment before it arrives. You imagine failures that have not occurred. You argue with conversations that exist only in your imagination. You build entire futures upon fears rather than facts. Then your body responds as though these imagined dangers were already present. You exhaust yourself fighting shadows while neglecting the work that actually stands before you. This habit quietly steals both your attention and your strength. Return instead to the present responsibility, not the entire week, not the next decade, not every possible outcome, only today's duty. This moment asks for your judgment, your integrity, and your effort. Nothing more has been required of you. Your mind becomes overwhelmed because it continually attempts to carry burdens that belong to tomorrow while ignoring the task that belongs to today. The future has no need of your anxiety. It will ask only for the same thing when it arrives that today asks now, a disciplined mind capable of choosing wisely. There is great freedom in limiting your concern to what your character can govern. You stop negotiating with circumstances that refuse negotiation. You stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world. You stop measuring your peace according to conditions that constantly change. Instead, your attention returns to the one place where improvement remains permanently available: your own conduct. Consider what happens when another person behaves unjustly toward you. The undisciplined mind immediately seeks revenge, endless explanation, or emotional surrender. It becomes trapped by another person's failure. The disciplined mind sees something different. Another person's conduct belongs to them. Your response belongs to you. Their lack of self-government does not excuse your own. Why should another person's mistake become permission for you to abandon reason? Their actions may create difficulty, but they cannot force corruption into your character unless you willingly cooperate. This understanding requires practice because habit always pulls you toward blame. Blame feels easier than responsibility because it promises relief without effort. As long as another person remains the cause of all your suffering, you never have to examine yourself. Yet this comfort is temporary and costly. Blame leaves you powerless because it ties your peace to someone else's behavior. Responsibility restores strength because it returns your attention to the one place where action is always possible. Each morning before beginning your work, spend several quiet moments preparing your mind. Tell yourself that unexpected events will arrive today. Plans may change, people may disappoint you, circumstances may become inconvenient. None of these possibilities are reasons to lose your balance. They are opportunities to practice governing your own judgment. By expecting difficulty instead of demanding constant ease, you remove much of its power to disturb you. Throughout the day, Develop the habit of pausing whenever frustration begins to rise. Before speaking, before reacting, before making the situation larger inside your mind, ask yourself what exactly has been placed within your care. You may discover that the only thing requiring immediate attention is your own interpretation. Correct that first. A clear judgment often resolves emotional confusion before it grows into unnecessary conflict. There is another illusion that deserves careful examination. Many people believe they will finally become peaceful once every external problem disappears. They imagine a future where relationships remain perfect, finances remain secure, health never declines, and every effort succeeds exactly as planned. Such a life has never existed. Peace built upon perfect circumstances can never become permanent because circumstances themselves refuse permanence. The disciplined soul seeks stability somewhere entirely different. It places peace within the quality of its own choices, rather than within changing events. You may wonder whether acceptance means passivity. It does not. Acceptance means seeing reality without demanding that reality becomes something else before you decide to act well. When rain falls, you acknowledge the rain before choosing your response. When loss arrives, you acknowledge the loss before deciding how virtue will meet it. When success appears, you acknowledge success without allowing pride to govern you. Acceptance does not remove effort. It removes resistance to what has already become real. Pay close attention to the language you use with yourself. Whenever you say that something should not have happened, ask whether your complaint changes the fact before you. Reality remains unchanged regardless of protest. Energy spent denying what already exists cannot be used improving what still depends upon your action. The disciplined person does not waste strength arguing with completed events. He immediately asks what honorable response remains available. One of the greatest obstacles to inner freedom is the belief that happiness depends upon arranging life exactly according to personal preference. Every preference becomes another opportunity for disappointment when treated as a necessity. Learn instead to distinguish between what you would like and what virtue actually requires. You may prefer comfort, but virtue may ask for endurance. You may prefer praise, but virtue may ask for honest speech despite criticism. You may prefer immediate success, but virtue may ask for patient effort without visible reward. Preference serves appetite, virtue serves reason. Practice reducing unnecessary attachment to outcomes. Before beginning any important task, remind yourself that your responsibility ends with faithful effort guided by wisdom. Whether others approve, whether fortune cooperates, whether recognition arrives, these belong to causes beyond your complete authority. This reminder does not weaken commitment, it purifies commitment. You begin working because the work itself deserves excellence, rather than because success promises emotional security. Observe how different your relationships become when you stop attempting to manage every emotion another person experiences. You can listen with sincerity. You can speak with honesty. You can offer kindness without calculation. Yet you cannot force understanding. You cannot command gratitude. You cannot guarantee affection. Once you accept these limits, your relationships become healthier because they are no longer burdened by impossible expectations. Another valuable discipline is learning to release the need for immediate certainty. Many decisions must be made without complete knowledge. Waiting for absolute assurance often becomes another form of avoidance. Examine what reason presently reveals. Choose the most honorable course available. Accept that outcomes remain uncertain. Then continue without endless hesitation. A well-governed mind values wise judgment more than impossible certainty. At the close of each day, return to yourself with honesty. Do not begin by asking whether everything unfolded according to your plans. Begin by asking whether you remained faithful to your principles despite changing circumstances. Did you preserve patience when inconvenience appeared? Did you maintain justice when treated unfairly? Did you continue your duty when comfort invited retreat? These questions measure genuine progress because they concern what has always remained within your authority. There will be days when your efforts produce visible success. There will also be days when careful preparation ends in disappointment. Meet both conditions with equal discipline. Success should not persuade you that fortune now belongs to you forever. Failure should not persuade you that virtue has become worthless. External results change constantly. Character grows through steady commitment regardless of changing results. Remember also that time itself refuses your command. You cannot recover yesterday through regret. You cannot possess tomorrow through worry. You possess only the present opportunity to think clearly and act rightly. Every hour spent resisting this truth is an hour surrendered to unnecessary suffering. Every hour spent embracing it becomes an opportunity for freedom. As this practice deepens, you begin noticing subtle changes within yourself. Delays no longer provoke immediate irritation. Unexpected criticism no longer destroys your confidence. Uncertain futures no longer demand endless mental rehearsal. You become slower to complain because you recognize how little complaint contributes to right action. Your attention settles naturally upon the next honorable step instead of scattering itself across imagined possibilities. This transformation does not occur because life becomes easier. It occurs because your standards become wiser. You stop evaluating each day according to comfort and begin evaluating it according to character. A difficult day lived with patience becomes a successful day. A disappointing outcome met with integrity becomes a successful outcome. A painful conversation handled with justice becomes a worthy victory regardless of another person's response. Never confuse acceptance with surrender to weakness. Acceptance concerns reality. Weakness concerns your choices. You may accept illness while refusing self-pity. You may accept loss while refusing bitterness. You may accept uncertainty while refusing panic. The event remains beyond your command. Your moral purpose remains entirely your own. This distinction protects your freedom under every condition life presents. Train yourself to return repeatedly to this question whenever confusion arises. What belongs entirely to my own judgment at this very moment? Do not ask what another person should do. Do not ask what fortune should provide. Do not ask how the past should have unfolded. Ask only where your own responsibility begins. There you will always find meaningful work waiting. If you remain faithful to this discipline, your life gradually becomes lighter without becoming easier. The weight of impossible expectations falls away. The constant struggle against uncontrollable events loses its attraction. Your mind grows quieter because it no longer attempts to rule what was never placed under its authority. Instead, all your strength gathers around the one task that has always deserved your full attention, the cultivation of a rational, disciplined, and virtuous character. Carry this understanding into tomorrow's first moments. Before the world asks anything of you, remind yourself that your peace does not depend upon favorable conditions. It depends upon how faithfully you govern what has been entrusted to you. Accept willingly what lies beyond your command. Devote yourself completely to what remains within it. In that simple discipline you will discover a freedom that cannot be granted by fortune and cannot be taken away by circumstance. That freedom begins the moment you stop trying to possess the world and begin governing yourself. Number 4. Discipline your daily choices until confidence becomes unshakable character. You often believe that confidence appears before disciplined action. You wait for certainty before you begin. You tell yourself that once you feel stronger, you will become more consistent. Once doubt disappears, you will finally live according to your principles. Yet every day that passes proves the opposite. Your feelings continue to change, your motivation rises and falls, and certainty remains unreliable. If your conduct depends upon emotion, then your character will change with every passing mood. A life built this way cannot become stable because its foundation never stands still. Real confidence is not an emotion that visits fortunate people. It is the quiet result of repeated obedience to reason. It is earned each time you choose what is right instead of what is immediately pleasant. It grows whenever your actions remain faithful to your principles despite discomfort. It is not something you discover hidden within yourself. It is something you construct one decision at a time until your own mind no longer questions whether you will keep your word. Look carefully at the ordinary choices that shape your days. Most people ignore them because they appear too small to matter. Yet your character is never built during extraordinary moments alone. It is formed through the unnoticed decisions repeated hundreds of times. The choice to speak honestly when dishonesty would be easier. The choice to complete necessary work when distraction offers temporary pleasure. The choice to remain calm when irritation invites reaction. The choice to act with justice even when selfishness promises immediate advantage. Every one of these moments becomes another stone placed into the foundation of your character. Do not underestimate the power of repetition. Every repeated action teaches your mind what kind of person you are becoming. When you repeatedly surrender to convenience, your mind learns that comfort rules your conduct. When you repeatedly submit to fear, your mind concludes that courage cannot be trusted. When you repeatedly abandon your own judgments because circumstances become difficult, your inner life slowly loses respect for itself. Your future decisions become weaker because your past choices have educated your expectations. The opposite is equally true. Every time you refuse an impulse that conflicts with reason, you strengthen your capacity for future discipline. Every time you complete a difficult duty without complaint, you quietly reshape your own identity. You begin to see yourself not as someone who waits for ideal conditions, but as someone capable of acting honorably regardless of conditions. This transformation cannot be borrowed from books or speeches. It must be earned through repeated practice until disciplined action becomes more familiar than excuse. Many people seek confidence by collecting achievements. They believe success itself will remove uncertainty. Yet achievements built without disciplined character often produce greater fear because they must constantly be protected. A person who measures himself only by success becomes anxious whenever success is threatened. He begins serving outcomes instead of serving virtue. His peace depends upon circumstances remaining favorable. Such confidence is fragile because it stands upon external events rather than inner stability. The stronger foundation is entirely different. Build your confidence upon the certainty that no matter what happens today, you will choose according to reason. Whether praised or criticized, you will preserve honesty. Whether rewarded or overlooked, you will continue your duty. Whether circumstances become easy or difficult, you will not abandon justice, moderation, courage, or wisdom. This confidence cannot be removed by fortune because it depends only upon your continued willingness to govern yourself. There is a dangerous habit that quietly weakens discipline. It is the habit of making exceptions for yourself. You tell yourself that today's delay does not matter, today's unnecessary complaint is harmless, today's avoidance will be corrected tomorrow. Yet every exception teaches the mind that principles exist only when convenient. Once convenience becomes the measure of conduct, discipline slowly disappears without announcing its departure. Reason does not ask whether the present task feels attractive. It asks whether the task deserves completion. If it does, then action follows. The disciplined mind does not negotiate endlessly with reluctance. It recognizes reluctance as another impression requiring examination rather than obedience. Feelings deserve attention but not authority. They may inform you of your condition, but they should never determine your character. Notice how often your greatest obstacles appear before the work has even begun. Your imagination predicts difficulty long before difficulty arrives. You convince yourself that effort will be unbearable. You enlarge simple responsibilities until they appear impossible. Then you postpone action because you have accepted predictions instead of reality. Once you finally begin, you often discover that the work itself was less demanding than the fear surrounding it. The undisciplined mind exaggerates resistance because exaggeration provides another excuse for delay. Train yourself to interrupt this pattern. When hesitation appears, reduce your attention to the immediate action before you. Do not measure the entire journey. Measure only the next faithful step. Complete it with care, then complete the next. Character grows through present decisions rather than distant intentions. A person who continually returns to the next right action accomplishes far more than one who waits endlessly for complete confidence before beginning. Each morning, establish your direction before circumstances attempt to establish it for you. Sit quietly for a few moments and remind yourself what kind of person you intend to become today. Do not focus upon what you hope to receive from the day. Focus upon what you intend to contribute through your conduct. Tell yourself that honesty will guide your speech, patience will govern your reactions, justice will shape your dealings with others, moderation will restrain unnecessary desires, wisdom will examine every impression before consent is given. By setting these intentions clearly, you prepare your reason before emotions begin competing for authority. As the day unfolds, remain attentive to the smallest departures from your principles. Discipline rarely disappears through dramatic collapse. More often it fades through unnoticed compromises. A careless word spoken without reflection, a promise abandoned because convenience intervened. A moment of resentment silently entertained instead of corrected. Each small surrender appears insignificant alone. Together they reshape the entire character. The disciplined person therefore guards ordinary moments with extraordinary care. You must also learn to distinguish effort from appearance. Many people wish to appear disciplined while secretly avoiding the work discipline requires. They admire consistency but continue negotiating with every passing impulse. They speak often about personal growth yet refuse the daily inconvenience through which growth actually occurs. Character is indifferent to appearances. It responds only to repeated conduct. The life you quietly practice becomes the life you truly possess. There will be days when discipline feels natural, and days when it feels demanding. Do not assign greater value to one day than the other. In fact, the difficult day often provides greater opportunity because it reveals whether your principles remain active without emotional support. Acting well when enthusiasm is abundant teaches little. Acting well when enthusiasm is absent reveals genuine progress. Another important exercise is learning to welcome correction without injury to your pride. When someone truthfully points out a fault, receive the observation with gratitude rather than defensiveness. A fault acknowledged becomes available for improvement. A fault denied continues directing your life unnoticed. Your purpose is not to protect an image of perfection. Your purpose is to become more aligned with reason. Pride delays this work because it prefers appearance over progress. Be careful not to mistake harshness toward yourself for discipline. The disciplined mind is firm without becoming destructive. When you fall short, acknowledge the mistake completely. Examine its cause honestly. Then return immediately to right action without unnecessary self-condemnation. Endless guilt consumes attention that should be devoted to correction. The proper response to failure is renewed commitment, not prolonged self-punishment. Throughout the day, ask yourself a simple question before important decisions. If this choice were repeated every day for the next year, what kind of character would it create? This question shifts your attention away from temporary satisfaction toward lasting formation. You begin seeing each decision as instruction given to your future self. Every action becomes another lesson, teaching your mind what it should expect from you. There is no hidden secret behind dependable character. It is built through alignment between judgment and conduct. When reason identifies the honorable course, action follows without endless argument. This unity gradually removes inner conflict because your thoughts no longer compete against your behavior. Many people suffer not because they lack knowledge, but because they repeatedly violate what they already know to be right. Inner division grows whenever conviction remains separated from action. Guard carefully against comparing your progress with that of others. Discipline is an inward practice, not a public competition. Someone else may advance more quickly in visible accomplishments while neglecting deeper virtues. Another may appear confident while privately governed by fear. These comparisons distract you from your actual responsibility. Your concern is whether today's choices display greater wisdom than yesterday's. Improvement measured against your own previous conduct remains honest because it concerns what truly belongs to your care. There will always be circumstances inviting you to compromise your principles for temporary advantage. You may gain approval through dishonesty. You may secure comfort through avoidance. You may preserve reputation by remaining silent when justice requires speech. Such opportunities test whether your confidence rests upon character or convenience. The disciplined person understands that every compromise weakens the foundation upon which future strength depends. As evening arrives, withdraw from the noise of the day and conduct a careful examination. Review your actions without haste. Ask where reason governed successfully. Ask where emotion gained unnecessary influence. Observe moments when patience endured and moments when impatience interrupted good judgment. Consider where courage remained steady and where fear quietly redirected your choices. This practice transforms experience into instruction because every day becomes a teacher rather than merely another passage of time. Do not end this examination with empty satisfaction or unnecessary disappointment. End it with clarity. Identify one decision tomorrow that deserves greater discipline than today. Carry that intention into your next morning. Character develops through countless small corrections faithfully repeated rather than through dramatic resolutions quickly abandoned. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop seeking confidence because you recognize it emerging naturally from your conduct. Your promises carry greater weight because you have learned to keep them. Your judgments become steadier because they are no longer driven by changing emotions. Difficult situations lose some of their power because your response has become more dependable. Even uncertainty appears less threatening because you trust your ability to choose wisely regardless of outcome. People may notice this change, but their recognition is not its purpose. The deepest reward remains entirely internal. You begin experiencing harmony between what you believe and how you live. This harmony produces a quiet strength that requires no display. It does not seek admiration because it is already sustained by integrity. It does not depend upon constant reassurance because repeated discipline has established trust within your own mind. Remember that every sunrise places the same opportunity before you. Not the opportunity to become perfect in a single day, but the opportunity to strengthen your character through today's choices. Great transformations are hidden within ordinary decisions. Speak truthfully when falsehood appears easier. Complete your responsibilities when delay becomes tempting. Govern your emotions before they govern your actions. Preserve justice when selfishness appears profitable. Practice moderation when excess invites you. Continue returning to wisdom whenever confusion arises. Do not wait for life to become simpler before practicing discipline. The present moment contains everything required for your training. Every inconvenience offers patience. Every temptation offers self-restraint. Every disagreement offers justice. Every uncertainty offers trust in reason rather than impulse. The very conditions you often resist are the conditions through which character is strengthened. If you remain faithful to this daily work, confidence will no longer resemble excitement or pride. It will become something quieter and far more enduring. It will become the settled knowledge that your principles are no longer fragile because they have been tested repeatedly through action. You will know that your character does not change with praise, criticism, success, failure, comfort, or hardship because it has been disciplined through countless deliberate choices. This is the confidence worth seeking. Not confidence that the world will always reward you, but confidence that you will continue choosing what is honorable regardless of what the world provides. Such confidence cannot be borrowed, purchased, or inherited. It is earned through the patient government of yourself. Every disciplined decision strengthens it. Every faithful action preserves it. Every honest examination refines it. Continue this work each day, and what begins as effort will gradually become your nature. When that happens, confidence will no longer be something you pursue. It will have become the quiet expression of an unshakable character. Number 5. Reject every excuse that weakens your inner resolve today. Every excuse you accept becomes a quiet agreement with weakness. It does not arrive wearing the appearance of failure. It often arrives sounding reasonable, patient, even compassionate toward yourself. It tells you that tomorrow will be a better time. It tells you that your circumstances are unusually difficult. It tells you that one more delay will make no difference. You listen because the voice asks for very little in the present, yet what it truly asks is far greater. It asks you to surrender authority over your own character. It asks you to exchange deliberate action for comfortable postponement. If you continue granting permission to that voice, you slowly become a stranger to your own highest judgment. Your greatest obstacle is rarely the difficulty standing before you. More often, it is the explanation you create to avoid facing it. The task may require effort, but the excuse removes the necessity to begin. The conversation may require honesty, but the excuse allows silence to appear wise. The correction may require humility, but the excuse protects your pride. You begin believing that your greatest enemy exists outside you, while the true obstacle quietly speaks in your own thoughts every day. Notice how quickly the mind invents reasons when duty becomes uncomfortable. It does not usually deny that something is right. Instead, it argues that today is not the proper time. It promises future discipline while quietly stealing present action. It assures you that once your emotions improve, your commitment will become stronger. Yet the emotions it asks you to wait for rarely arrive. Days become weeks, weeks become years. A person can spend an entire life preparing to live without ever beginning. Reason never asks whether convenience has appeared. Reason asks whether the present moment contains an opportunity to act with virtue. If the answer is yes, then delay has already lost its argument. The disciplined person understands that the proper time for right action is discovered not by favorable circumstances, but by faithful judgment. Whenever wisdom identifies the next honorable step, that moment becomes sufficient. Many excuses survive because they are never examined. They pass through the mind without resistance. You hear them so often that they begin sounding like truth. Therefore, your first discipline is not rejecting excuses immediately. Your first discipline is exposing them to careful inspection. Whenever your mind offers a reason to avoid necessary effort, pause and ask whether the reason protects your character or merely protects your comfort. This question removes disguise from many thoughts that previously appeared convincing. One common excuse declares that you cannot act until you feel prepared. Yet preparation without action eventually becomes another form of avoidance. Knowledge has value only when it directs conduct. A person may understand many principles while remaining governed by hesitation. Another may possess less knowledge, yet faithfully practice what he already knows. Which person has truly advanced? Growth belongs to the one whose actions follow reason rather than endless preparation. Another excuse insists that your past has already determined your future. It reminds you of previous failures and invites you to conclude that further effort is pointless. This thought deserves immediate correction. Your past provides experience but not destiny. Every present decision remains available regardless of yesterday's mistakes. If you continue defining yourself by former failures, you surrender today's opportunity before it has even arrived. Wisdom learns from the past without becoming imprisoned by it. You may also tell yourself that other people have made discipline impossible. Their behavior frustrated your plans, their words weakened your confidence, their unfairness discouraged your effort. Certainly another person's conduct can create genuine difficulty. Yet difficulty never removes your responsibility for your own judgment. Another person's lack of self-government cannot become permission for abandoning your own. If you allow external behavior to dictate your moral purpose, then your character no longer belongs to you. There is another excuse that appears especially persuasive. It tells you that small failures deserve little attention. One unnecessary complaint seems harmless. One broken promise appears insignificant. One neglected responsibility seems too minor for concern. Yet character is shaped by accumulation rather than isolated events. Every neglected opportunity quietly teaches the mind what it should expect from itself. A single compromise rarely transforms a person, but repeated compromises eventually redefine him. The disciplined soul understands that every choice becomes practice. Whether you intend it or not, your mind is always being trained. If you repeatedly obey convenience, convenience becomes your teacher. If you repeatedly obey appetite, appetite becomes your ruler. If you repeatedly obey reason, reason gradually assumes its rightful place. No decision remains isolated because every decision prepares the next. This is why today's excuse possesses consequences extending far beyond today. Begin every morning by preparing yourself for this invisible contest. Before entering your responsibilities, sit quietly and consider where excuses are most likely to appear. Perhaps they will tempt you toward impatience when others move slowly. Perhaps they will invite distraction when your work requires attention. Perhaps they will encourage unnecessary comfort when discipline demands effort. By identifying these familiar patterns before they arise, you reduce their ability to surprise you. The prepared mind recognizes temptation more quickly than the unprepared one. As you move through the day, become attentive not only to your actions but to the conversations occurring within your own thinking. Most outward failures begin as inward agreements. Long before a responsibility is neglected, permission has already been granted inside the mind. Long before harsh words leave your mouth, resentment has been entertained without examination. Long before discouragement appears, reason has quietly surrendered its authority. Learn to observe these earlier moments because correction becomes easier before action has followed. When you encounter resistance, avoid asking how to eliminate discomfort. Instead, ask whether discomfort has any authority over what is right. Physical effort may become unpleasant. Honest speech may produce anxiety. Patient endurance may require sacrifice. None of these conditions alter the nature of virtue. They merely reveal whether your commitment depends upon ease or upon principle. A life governed by reason refuses to let temporary feelings determine permanent values. One of the strongest forms of inner resolve comes from refusing to negotiate endlessly with yourself. There are moments when reflection is necessary, but there are also moments when reflection becomes delay disguised as wisdom. Once reason has clearly identified your duty, continued argument serves no useful purpose. At that point, your responsibility shifts from discussion to execution. Every unnecessary negotiation strengthens hesitation. Every prompt act of virtue strengthens determination. Do not imagine that discipline requires dramatic acts each day. More often, it asks for quiet consistency in ordinary circumstances. Rise when you intended to rise. Complete the task you promised to complete. Listen fully before speaking. Correct an unworthy thought before it grows into speech. Fulfill your responsibilities without demanding admiration. These actions rarely attract attention from others, yet they steadily transform the person performing them. Character matures through ordinary faithfulness more than extraordinary displays. Pay careful attention to the habit of complaint. Complaint often disguises itself as honest observation, yet it frequently serves another purpose. It attempts to justify surrender by magnifying inconvenience. Once the mind becomes accustomed to complaining, every obstacle appears larger than it truly is. Difficulties begin occupying more attention than duties. The disciplined person acknowledges hardship without allowing hardship to dominate conversation or imagination. He conserves his strength for action instead of scattering it through unnecessary protest. Another dangerous excuse says that one person's wrongdoing gives you permission to lower your own standards. Someone deceived you, therefore honesty seems unnecessary. Someone treated you unfairly, therefore justice appears foolish. Someone acted without restraint, therefore moderation feels pointless. This reasoning corrupts two people instead of one. Their failure belongs to them. Your response belongs entirely to you. Never allow another person's weakness to become the architect of your own conduct. There will be moments when you sincerely fail despite honest effort. Distinguish these moments carefully from those created by excuse. Honest failure teaches valuable lessons because it occurs while pursuing virtue. Excuse prevents learning because it avoids effort altogether. If you attempted what reason required and fell short, examine the mistake with humility and continue. If you avoided action through self-deception, acknowledge the avoidance directly and begin again without delay. Progress depends upon truthful diagnosis rather than comfortable illusion. Throughout the afternoon, when energy naturally declines, observe how excuses often become more persuasive. Fatigue invites shortcuts. Irritation invites careless speech. Weariness encourages abandoning standards established earlier in the day. This period deserves special attention because discipline often weakens gradually rather than suddenly. A single mindful pause before responding can preserve hours of patient effort already invested. Protect your principles, especially when your emotions begin requesting exceptions. Practice another exercise whenever disappointment appears. Separate the event itself from the interpretation surrounding it. Perhaps your work was overlooked. Perhaps your expectations remained unfulfilled. Instead of immediately concluding that continued effort lacks value, ask whether the event changes your responsibility to act with excellence. Usually it does not. Your duty remains exactly what it was before disappointment arrived. By returning your attention to this truth, you prevent discouragement from becoming another excuse for diminished effort. As evening approaches, withdraw from the demands of the day and conduct an honest examination. Ask yourself where excuses appeared most convincingly. Do not merely identify outward actions. Trace each action back to the thought that permitted it. Perhaps impatience began with the belief that others should always move according to your preferences. Perhaps avoidance began with the belief that discomfort must always be escaped. Discover the mistaken judgment beneath the behavior. Correcting judgment prevents repeated failure more effectively than condemning actions alone. During this examination, refuse both pride and despair. Pride hides faults that require correction. Despair exaggerates faults until improvement appears impossible. Neither serves wisdom. The proper attitude is clear observation joined with renewed commitment. Every day offers another opportunity to strengthen the rule of reason. Yesterday's weakness becomes valuable only when it instructs tomorrow's discipline. Gradually, you will notice a profound change taking place. Excuses no longer disappear because circumstances have become easier. They lose influence because you have stopped accepting them without examination. You recognize their familiar patterns before they direct your conduct. What once sounded persuasive now reveals itself as an invitation to surrender responsibility. Your inner resolve becomes steadier because it rests upon repeated acts of truthful judgment rather than passing emotion. This transformation extends into every part of life. Your relationships become more reliable because your promises are no longer governed by convenience. Your work becomes more consistent because effort no longer waits for inspiration. Your speech becomes more measured because irritation no longer receives immediate permission. Even moments of solitude become more peaceful because your conscience no longer carries the burden of repeated self-betrayal. Remember that inner resolve is not measured by the absence of temptation. It is measured by the quality of your response whenever temptation appears. The disciplined mind does not expect life to remove every challenge. It expects itself to meet challenges with increasing clarity. Every excuse rejected strengthens this expectation. Every honorable action confirms that your reason remains capable of governing your life. When tomorrow begins, do not ask whether the day will be easy. Ask whether you are prepared to refuse every thought that invites you away from virtue. Let your first commitment be to honesty with yourself. Refuse to disguise fear as caution when courage is required. Refuse to disguise laziness as patience when duty calls. Refuse to disguise resentment as justice when forgiveness better serves reason. Refuse every explanation that asks you to become less than the person your own conscience already knows you can be. Your greatest victory will never consist in arranging perfect circumstances around you. It will consist in becoming the kind of person who no longer depends upon excuses to explain inaction. Such a person acts because reason has spoken. Such a person perseveres because virtue remains worthy regardless of difficulty. Such a person rests each evening knowing that although the world remained uncertain, he did not abandon the government of himself. Carry this discipline into every ordinary hour. Guard the doorway of your mind where excuses first seek entrance. Examine every thought before granting it authority. Keep only those judgments that strengthen courage, justice, moderation, and wisdom. Release everything that weakens your resolve. Day after day, this practice will shape a character that no longer searches for reasons to postpone what is right. It will shape a life directed not by convenient stories, but by unwavering commitment to the highest use of your own rational nature. Number 6. Examine each judgment before allowing any emotion to rule. The greatest battles of your life rarely begin with the world outside you. They begin in a single instant inside your own mind, in the brief moment between what happens and what you decide it means. Most people never notice this moment. An event occurs, an emotion rises, words are spoken, and action follows so quickly that they believe the emotion itself forced the response. Yet this belief quietly gives away the very freedom that reason was meant to protect. Your emotions do not appear from empty space. They grow from the judgments you make about what you experience. If you never examine those judgments, then you surrender your life to reactions that were never tested for truth. Consider how often a simple event becomes something much larger because of the conclusion you immediately attach to it. A delayed message becomes rejection. A mistake becomes proof of failure. Silence becomes disrespect. A disagreement becomes personal hostility. None of these meanings exist within the event itself. They are added afterward by an undisciplined mind eager to explain reality before understanding it. Once the judgment has been accepted without examination, the emotion follows naturally. Anger, fear, envy, disappointment, resentment, and anxiety begin directing your conduct, not because reality demanded them, but because your interpretation invited them. This is why your first responsibility is never to fight the emotion itself. The wiser task is to investigate the judgment that gave it life. A tree cannot continue growing if its root is removed. In the same way, an unhealthy emotional disturbance loses its force when the mistaken judgment beneath it is corrected. Many people spend years attempting to suppress feelings while leaving the beliefs that created those feelings untouched. Such effort produces only temporary relief because the source remains active. Your mind has developed habits over many years. Some judgments now appear so quickly that they seem inseparable from reality. You no longer notice that they are judgments at all. You call yourself unlucky because disappointment has become familiar. You assume the worst because fear has been repeatedly obeyed. You expect betrayal because old injuries continue speaking through present circumstances. These habits are powerful, but they are not permanent. Every habit of judgment can be retrained when reason resumes its proper authority. When you awaken each morning, do not immediately concern yourself with the events waiting outside your door. Begin instead by preparing the faculty that will meet those events. Sit quietly before the demands of the day begin. Remind yourself that impressions will arrive constantly. Some will invite irritation, others will awaken desire, some will encourage discouragement, others will tempt you toward pride. None of these first impressions deserve immediate agreement. Your responsibility is not to eliminate impressions. Your responsibility is to examine them before granting consent. This simple discipline changes the entire direction of the day. Instead of rushing from one emotional reaction to another, you begin living from deliberate judgment. You stop treating every passing thought as reliable guidance. You recognize that the first interpretation offered by your mind often reflects habit rather than wisdom. By slowing the movement from impression to conclusion, you create space where reason can perform its rightful work. Suppose someone speaks harshly to you. The ordinary habit is immediate offense. Your thoughts declare that you have been insulted, your emotions rise in response, and your speech soon reflects the disturbance already accepted within. The disciplined mind follows another path. Before responding, it quietly asks whether the words truly possess the power your emotions have assigned to them. Perhaps the other person speaks from ignorance. Perhaps they speak from frustration unrelated to you. Perhaps they are simply mistaken. None of these possibilities excuse poor conduct, but they remind you that another person's condition should not become the ruler of your own character. This pause is not weakness. It is one of the strongest expressions of inner government. Anyone can react immediately. Only a disciplined person refuses to surrender judgment before reason has completed its examination. Every thoughtful pause protects your freedom because it prevents circumstances from choosing your response in your place. The same practice applies when praise arrives. Pleasant emotions deserve examination just as much as painful ones. Admiration easily persuades the mind that personal worth has increased. Success quietly invites arrogance. Recognition tempts you to value appearance more than virtue. If you accept these impressions without reflection, pleasant experiences become as dangerous as unpleasant ones. The disciplined soul receives praise with gratitude, but never allows it to redefine its understanding of itself. Character remains measured by virtue rather than applause. Notice also how often your imagination produces emotional suffering without assistance from reality. You predict conversations that have not happened. You anticipate failures before beginning necessary work. You rehearse future disappointments until your body responds as though they already exist. The mind presents these imagined scenes as preparation, but they usually accomplish something else entirely. They weaken present action by exhausting strength upon events that may never occur. Before accepting these fearful predictions, ask whether evidence truly supports them, or whether habit has simply mistaken possibility for certainty. Many people believe emotional intensity proves sincerity. They assume that stronger feelings automatically reveal deeper truth. This assumption deserves careful correction. An emotion may feel overwhelming while remaining entirely based upon false judgment. A person may experience great anger because he believes himself disrespected when in fact he misunderstood another's intention. Another may experience intense fear because she imagines disaster where no real danger exists. Strength of feeling does not establish accuracy of thought. Only careful examination can accomplish that. Therefore, learn to separate what you feel from what you know. Feelings deserve acknowledgement because they reveal the present condition of your mind. They do not deserve unquestioned authority because they may rest upon mistaken conclusions. You need not deny your emotions. You need only refuse to crown them as rulers before reason has spoken. This distinction preserves both honesty and discipline. You recognize your inner condition without becoming its servant. Throughout the day, practice asking one quiet question whenever your emotions begin moving strongly. What judgment have I accepted that produced this feeling? Do not search first for external causes. Search inward for the interpretation already granted permission. You may discover that anger arose because you demanded perfect treatment from imperfect people. You may find that disappointment grew because you attached your peace to uncertain outcomes. You may notice that envy developed because you measured your worth against another person's circumstances. Once the hidden judgment becomes visible, correction becomes possible. One of the greatest dangers facing the mind is the desire to protect familiar judgments simply because they are familiar. Pride often resists correction more strongly than ignorance does. You would rather preserve an old belief than admit it has governed your life poorly. Yet wisdom demands another approach. Welcome the discovery of mistaken judgments because every false belief removed creates room for greater freedom. Correction is not an attack upon your dignity. It is evidence that your reason remains alive and willing to improve. As your practice deepens, you begin noticing subtle differences between impulse and judgment. An impulse arrives quickly. It seeks immediate expression. Judgment proceeds more carefully. It examines, compares, and chooses. The disciplined life does not eliminate impulses. Instead, it teaches reason to decide whether an impulse deserves action. Some impulses point toward worthy conduct. Others invite regret. Without examination, you cannot distinguish between them. Consider moments when disappointment enters your life through circumstances beyond your control. Perhaps a carefully prepared effort fails. Perhaps someone rejects your sincere intentions. Perhaps an opportunity disappears despite honest labor. The event itself deserves acknowledgement, but despair does not automatically follow. Despair enters only after the judgment that your happiness depended entirely upon that outcome. Correct the judgment and the emotional burden becomes lighter. You remain capable of grief without surrendering hope. You remain capable of accepting loss without abandoning virtue. This is why attention must remain continually directed toward your own thinking rather than endlessly toward changing events. The world presents situations. Your mind assigns meaning. If meaning remains undisciplined, no arrangement of external conditions will produce lasting peace. One difficulty removed will simply be replaced by another because the habit of false judgment continues unchanged. True progress begins where interpretation becomes wiser rather than where circumstances become easier. Practice another exercise during ordinary conversations. Listen not only to another person's words, but also to the judgments forming inside yourself while they speak. Observe how quickly the mind interrupts with assumptions, conclusions, and silent arguments. Resist the urge to accept these immediate interpretations. Allow the other person to finish. Give reason time to consider what has actually been said rather than what habit expected to hear. This single discipline transforms many relationships because misunderstanding often begins with judgments accepted too quickly. Another valuable practice concerns your own mistakes. When you fail, avoid the judgment that a single error defines your entire character. Such thinking encourages discouragement rather than improvement. Instead, ask what this mistake teaches about your present condition. Every error contains instruction for the person willing to examine it honestly. The purpose of self-examination is not self-condemnation. It is self-correction guided by reason rather than shame. During the evening, withdraw from distraction and review the movements of your own mind throughout the day. Recall moments when strong emotions appeared. Trace each one backward until you identify the judgment that produced it. Ask whether that judgment reflected truth or habit. Consider what a wiser interpretation might have been. This daily review gradually trains your reason to recognize familiar patterns before they govern tomorrow's responses. You begin educating yourself through experience instead of merely repeating experience. Be patient with this work because habits formed over many years do not disappear through a single resolution. There will be days when emotions outrun examination. There will be moments when old patterns return unexpectedly. Do not become discouraged. Every occasion noticed afterward becomes preparation for noticing sooner next time. Progress belongs to the person who continues returning to careful judgment rather than demanding instant perfection. As this discipline becomes stronger, your relationships quietly change. You become slower to assume harmful intentions. You become more willing to seek understanding before accusation. Your conversations contain less unnecessary conflict because you no longer treat every impression as established truth. Others may continue reacting impulsively, yet their haste no longer determines your own conduct. You preserve the freedom to choose your response according to reason rather than emotional contagion. Your work also changes. Difficult tasks no longer appear impossible merely because discomfort accompanies them. Temporary frustration loses its authority because you examine the belief that frustration requires surrender. Setbacks become information rather than personal defeat. Success becomes an opportunity for gratitude rather than vanity. In every circumstance, your attention returns to the quality of your judgment instead of the intensity of your emotion. Eventually, you discover that tranquility is not created by eliminating emotion, but by educating the mind that gives emotion its direction. Peace arises because your judgments have become more faithful to reality. Fear loses strength where false predictions are corrected. Anger softens where unreasonable expectations are abandoned. Envy fades where worth is no longer measured by comparison. Pride weakens where virtue replaces reputation as the standard of value. Remember that your greatest responsibility each day is not controlling every event you encounter. Your greatest responsibility is deciding which judgments deserve your agreement. Every impression seeks permission to shape your inner life. Do not grant that permission carelessly. Examine first. Ask whether the judgment encourages wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Ask whether it belongs to reason or merely to habit. Ask whether it leads you toward greater freedom or deeper dependence upon circumstances. Carry this practice into tomorrow with deliberate intention. Before speaking, examine. Before reacting, examine. Before believing the first story your mind creates, examine. Let no emotion become the ruler of your conduct until reason has considered the truth before it. Day after day, this discipline will reshape the very structure of your thinking. You will no longer live as someone carried wherever emotions happen to flow. You will become someone who receives every impression with calm attention, tests it with honest judgment, and chooses the path that preserves the dignity of a rational and virtuous life. That is the beginning of genuine freedom, and it remains available every time you refuse to let an unexamined judgment govern your soul. Number 7. Strengthen your character through consistent virtuous actions every day. Character is not revealed only when life becomes difficult. It is being formed long before difficulty arrives. Every ordinary decision either strengthens your inner life or quietly weakens it. The words you choose when no conflict exists, the promises you keep when no one is watching, The thoughts you allow to remain inside your mind without correction, these unnoticed moments, shape the person who will eventually face hardship. When the greater test finally comes, you will not suddenly become wise or courageous. You will respond according to the character you have been building through countless ordinary days. Many people spend their lives waiting for one defining moment that will prove who they are. They imagine that greatness appears during extraordinary circumstances. They overlook the truth that extraordinary moments simply uncover habits already established. The person who has practiced honesty in small matters will not suddenly become dishonest because pressure appears. The person who has patiently trained self-restraint through daily choices will not easily surrender to impulse when temptation becomes stronger. Every quiet act of virtue prepares you for circumstances that cannot yet be seen. Look honestly at your own life. Your greatest improvements have never arrived through wishing. They have arrived whenever you consistently acted according to reason despite inconvenience. The same principle governs every lasting transformation. Character is never granted, it is cultivated. It grows through repeated agreement between what you know to be right and what you actually choose to do. Whenever knowledge remains separated from conduct, wisdom remains incomplete. Do not make the mistake of believing that virtue belongs only to large moral decisions. Virtue belongs equally to the smallest responsibilities. Returning a kind answer when impatience seems easier, completing today's duty without searching for recognition, speaking carefully instead of carelessly, remaining truthful even when exaggeration promises advantage. These actions may appear ordinary, but they educate your soul. They teach your mind that reason deserves obedience in every circumstance, not merely in dramatic moments. The undisciplined mind constantly searches for visible rewards before committing itself fully. It asks what benefit honesty will bring. It wonders whether patience will be appreciated. It measures generosity according to expected return. Such thinking quietly transforms virtue into a transaction. Yet virtue loses its purity when practiced only for reward. The disciplined person acts justly because justice itself is worthy. He chooses moderation because moderation preserves the order of his character. He remains truthful because truth strengthens his own soul before it influences anyone else. Every morning offers an opportunity to begin this work again. Before the demands of the world begin competing for your attention, direct your thoughts toward the kind of person you intend to become throughout the day. Do not ask whether the day will provide comfort. Ask whether you will provide wisdom. Do not wonder whether others will treat you fairly. Determine in advance that you will treat others with justice regardless of their conduct. Place your attention upon the quality of your own actions rather than the uncertainty of external events. This morning discipline creates a standard by which the rest of the day can be measured. Once your intention has been established, every situation becomes another opportunity to express it. A difficult conversation becomes an opportunity for patience. An unexpected delay becomes an opportunity for self-restraint. A disagreement becomes an opportunity for fairness. An unnoticed act of service becomes an opportunity for humility. The world stops appearing as an endless collection of obstacles and begins revealing itself as the very place where character is strengthened. Many people underestimate the importance of consistency because they admire intensity instead. They believe one remarkable effort can compensate for months of neglect. Yet character does not respond to occasional enthusiasm. It responds to steady practice. A single day of discipline followed by many days of carelessness teaches instability rather than strength. The rational soul becomes dependable through repetition. Every day that you choose virtue over convenience deepens the habit until right action begins to feel natural rather than forced. There will be mornings when your emotions support your intentions. There will also be mornings when they oppose them. Do not assign authority to either condition. Feelings change more quickly than principles should. If you wait for perfect motivation before acting well, your conduct will become as unstable as your emotions. Let reason determine your actions while emotions gradually learn to follow. This order preserves freedom because your character no longer depends upon changing internal weather. One of the clearest signs of growing character is the disappearance of unnecessary conflict within yourself. At first, you must constantly persuade yourself to choose what is right. Every duty feels like a negotiation. Every temptation demands prolonged resistance. Yet, with faithful practice, something changes. The mind becomes more familiar with virtue than with compromise. Choices once requiring great effort begin requiring only quiet commitment. This is not because life has become easier, it is because your habits have become nobler. Guard yourself carefully against believing that hidden faults can remain harmless if concealed from others. Character concerns who you are before any audience exists. A dishonest thought entertained in solitude still shapes the person who later speaks in public. An act of selfishness unseen by others still influences future decisions. Your own conscience witnesses every action whether the world notices or not. Therefore, direct your greatest effort toward becoming honorable where recognition cannot reach. There is another danger that quietly interrupts growth. It is the desire for immediate perfection. You become discouraged because progress appears slower than expected. You compare today's weaknesses against an imagined ideal and conclude that improvement is insufficient. Such thinking overlooks the true nature of discipline. The purpose is not flawless performance in a single day. The purpose is faithful correction repeated across many days. Character matures gradually because every repeated choice leaves its mark upon the soul. When you fail, respond with honesty rather than discouragement. Admit the mistake completely. Refuse to excuse it. Then ask what judgment produced the action. Every outward failure begins with an inward error accepted without examination. Correct the judgment and future actions become easier to improve. This approach transforms mistakes into teachers instead of permanent burdens. The disciplined mind values truth more than protecting its own pride. Throughout the day, pay close attention to opportunities that appear too small to matter. The decision to listen without interrupting, the choice to remain composed when inconvenience appears, the willingness to admit ignorance instead of pretending certainty, the effort to complete an unpleasant responsibility with care rather than resentment. Each of these moments trains the same faculty. They strengthen your ability to place reason above impulse. The soul does not distinguish between important virtues and ordinary virtues. Every act aligned with wisdom contributes to the whole character. Another valuable practice is learning to perform worthy actions without expecting immediate recognition. The desire for praise often corrupts good intentions by shifting attention away from virtue toward appearance. When approval becomes the hidden goal, disappointment follows whenever appreciation fails to appear. Instead, ask only whether your conduct reflects justice, moderation, courage, and wisdom. If it does, then the action has already achieved its highest purpose, regardless of who notices. Observe how your relationships improve when virtue becomes your daily standard rather than emotional preference. You become more reliable because promises are no longer governed by convenience. Others experience greater patience because your reactions are examined before becoming speech. Forgiveness becomes easier because resentment no longer receives constant encouragement. Even disagreement becomes more respectful because your purpose shifts from victory toward understanding. Character quietly influences every relationship long before advice or persuasion ever can. Do not confuse gentleness with weakness. A disciplined character remains firm without becoming harsh. It corrects injustice without hatred. It speaks truth without unnecessary cruelty. It accepts correction without resentment. Such balance requires continual practice because extremes often appear easier than moderation. Anger feels powerful for a moment. Silence appears safer than honesty. Excess seems more satisfying than restraint. Yet reason continually guides you back toward measured action because balance preserves both dignity and clarity. Each afternoon, pause briefly and examine the direction of your day. Ask yourself whether your actions still agree with the intention established that morning. Have you allowed irritation to replace patience? Has ambition displaced justice? Has comfort begun directing decisions that should belong to wisdom? This brief interruption prevents small departures from becoming established habits. A course corrected early requires far less effort than one ignored until evening. As night approaches, withdraw from the distractions of the day and review your conduct with complete sincerity. Do not ask whether fortune favored you. Ask whether your character became stronger. Recall situations where virtue guided your choices. Recall others where impulse gained unnecessary influence. Notice patterns rather than isolated moments. The purpose is not to collect reasons for pride or shame. The purpose is to understand yourself more accurately so tomorrow's actions may become wiser than today's. This evening examination gradually builds self-knowledge. Without it, you remain dependent upon memory distorted by emotion. With it, you begin seeing recurring tendencies that previously escaped attention. Perhaps impatience appears whenever plans change. Perhaps pride arises whenever success arrives. Perhaps fear quietly enters before difficult conversations. Once these patterns become visible, they lose much of their hidden authority because reason can prepare for them in advance. As months pass, you begin recognizing a deeper transformation. You no longer seek virtue only during moments of inspiration. It becomes the natural language of your daily life. Honesty requires less effort because deception no longer appears attractive. Self-restraint becomes more familiar because indulgence has lost much of its influence. Courage grows quieter because it no longer depends upon dramatic displays. Wisdom becomes steadier because judgments are examined before action follows. The remarkable quality of genuine character is that it remains stable across changing circumstances. Prosperity does not inflate it. Hardship does not diminish it. Praise does not distract it. Criticism does not discourage it. Such stability is possible because character has been anchored in something stronger than fortune. It rests upon repeated choices freely made according to reason rather than conditions imposed by the world. Never believe that a single virtuous action completes your work. Every sunrise invites renewed commitment. Yesterday's integrity cannot replace today's responsibility. Each day asks again whether you will govern your thoughts, examine your judgments, fulfill your duties, and preserve your principles. Character remains alive only through continual practice. Like a neglected field, even noble qualities weaken when left unattended. Therefore, approach each morning with humility rather than assumption, ready to strengthen again what has already begun growing. The world often celebrates visible accomplishments while overlooking invisible discipline. Resist the temptation to adopt the same standard. Measure your progress by the quiet victories that occur within your own mind. The moment you refuse resentment despite provocation, the decision to remain truthful despite disadvantage, the willingness to continue honorable work without recognition. These victories rarely receive applause, yet they shape the person you become more deeply than public success ever could. Remember that no circumstance possesses the power to build your character by itself. Circumstances merely present opportunities. The true work occurs within your own choices. Every challenge asks the same question in a different form. Will reason remain your guide, or will impulse assume command? Your answer is written not through intentions alone, but through repeated action. Character is simply the accumulated record of those answers faithfully lived. Carry this understanding into tomorrow without seeking dramatic change. Look instead for the next opportunity to practice virtue with complete attention. Perform each duty carefully, speak each word thoughtfully, correct each mistaken judgment before it becomes action. Accept each inconvenience as another occasion for patience. Meet every person with justice, regardless of how they meet you. These daily actions may appear modest, but together they accomplish what no sudden burst of motivation ever can. They gradually create a character that remains upright in every season of life, because it has been strengthened one virtuous choice at a time. When this way of living becomes established, confidence no longer depends upon success, reputation, or favorable conditions. It arises naturally from the quiet knowledge that your actions consistently reflect your highest understanding of what is right. That confidence cannot be borrowed from praise or destroyed by criticism, because it rests upon something far more enduring. It rests upon a character patiently shaped through countless ordinary days in which reason was chosen over impulse and virtue was chosen over convenience. This is the work that gives lasting strength to a human life, and it begins again every time you choose to act well today. Number 8. Endure present hardship with calm and unwavering rational courage always. Hardship does not ask whether you are prepared before it arrives. It enters your life without requesting permission. It interrupts your plans, challenges your confidence, and exposes every belief that has never been tested. Many people spend years hoping that a peaceful life means a life without difficulty. They measure success by the absence of struggle and mistake comfort for strength. Yet comfort has never been the true measure of a disciplined life. A calm mind is not revealed when everything unfolds according to desire. It is revealed when events refuse to obey your wishes and you still choose to govern yourself with reason. The first mistake most people make during hardship is believing that the event itself has destroyed their peace. They look outward and identify circumstances as the source of their suffering. They point to the loss, the disappointment, the failure, or the uncertainty, and conclude that these things possess authority over their inner life. Yet the greatest injury often begins somewhere else. It begins when the mind decides that reality should have been different. From that judgment grows resistance. From resistance grows bitterness. From bitterness grows despair. The event may be unavoidable, but the unnecessary suffering that follows often begins with the refusal to accept what has already become real. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not require you to enjoy pain or welcome loss. It simply means that reason refuses to waste its strength arguing with facts that cannot be changed. Once something has already happened, your opinion about whether it should have happened no longer alters reality. Every moment spent demanding another past is a moment stolen from your ability to act wisely in the present. The disciplined mind therefore begins with a simple acknowledgement. This has happened. Now my responsibility is to decide what kind of person I will be while facing it. Hardship has a remarkable way of uncovering hidden attachments. During peaceful times, you may believe that your tranquility depends entirely upon your own character. Then difficulty arrives, and suddenly your peace seems tied to outcomes, possessions, reputation, or certainty about the future. What changed was not your character alone. Hardship revealed where your dependence had quietly settled. It exposed the places where you had entrusted your peace to things that never belonged entirely to your control. Do not resent this revelation. Welcome it as honest instruction. A hidden weakness cannot be strengthened until it has been discovered. If hardship reveals impatience, then patience becomes your work. If it reveals fear, then courage deserves greater attention. If it uncovers excessive attachment to comfort, then moderation requires deeper practice. Every difficulty becomes useful when it teaches you where reason still requires greater authority. Many people imagine courage as the absence of fear. They believe the courageous person simply feels nothing when facing uncertainty. Yet reason teaches another lesson. Courage does not require emptying yourself of every emotional response. Courage requires refusing to let fear become your commander. You may feel uncertainty. You may experience disappointment. You may notice anxiety rising within you. None of these experiences remove your ability to choose wisely. The presence of fear never excuses the abandonment of virtue. This understanding changes how you approach every difficult moment. Instead of asking how to eliminate discomfort, ask how to preserve wisdom while discomfort exists. Instead of demanding immediate relief, ask whether your present conduct reflects justice, moderation, honesty, and sound judgment. Hardship often convinces people that their first responsibility is escaping pain. The disciplined person remembers that his first responsibility is preserving his character regardless of pain. Begin each morning by preparing yourself for the certainty that not everything will unfold according to your preference. Some conversations may disappoint you, some efforts may fail, unexpected delays may interrupt your plans, someone may misunderstand your intentions, your body may grow tired, circumstances may shift without warning. None of these possibilities deserve surprise because they belong to the ordinary nature of life. When you expect only comfort, every inconvenience appears as an injustice. When you expect reality to include challenge, difficulty loses much of its power to disturb your judgment. This morning preparation is not pessimism, it is clarity. It reminds your mind that external events cannot promise lasting security. Your true preparation, therefore, concerns not changing the world, but strengthening your own responses. You cannot command every event waiting ahead, but you can prepare the faculty that will meet them. A disciplined morning creates a steadier afternoon because your expectations have already been corrected before circumstances begin testing them. As you move through the day, pay close attention to the first thoughts that arise when hardship appears. The initial impression often speaks with great confidence. It declares that the situation is unbearable. It predicts lasting failure. It insists that you have been treated unfairly beyond endurance. Pause before agreeing. The first impression is only an invitation. It is not yet truth. Ask yourself whether reason confirms the conclusion or whether emotion has merely spoken first. This brief examination protects you from multiplying unnecessary suffering through hasty judgment. Suppose you lose something valuable. Your immediate thought may tell you that your life has been permanently diminished. Yet, examine that judgment carefully. Has your capacity for honesty disappeared? Has your ability to choose justice vanished? Has wisdom become impossible? Has courage left you forever? If your character remains available, then your greatest possession has not been taken. You have experienced loss, but you have not been deprived of the one thing capable of preserving your dignity. The same principle applies when others disappoint you. Human beings often act according to confusion, desire, fear, or ignorance. If you build your peace upon the expectation that every person will always behave wisely, disappointment becomes inevitable. A calmer expectation recognizes that people often fail to govern themselves. This recognition does not excuse harmful behavior, but it prevents unnecessary astonishment. You stop demanding perfection from imperfect people and begin directing greater attention toward maintaining your own principles regardless of theirs. Another common mistake during hardship is imagining that today's pain reveals the whole future. The mind quickly expands one difficult moment into a permanent conclusion. Temporary uncertainty becomes certain ruin. One setback becomes proof that every effort will fail. This habit deserves immediate correction. Reason deals with what exists now rather than inventing disasters that have not arrived. Your responsibility belongs to the present decision before you, not to imagined futures created by fear. Practice returning your attention repeatedly to the present duty. If sorrow appears, let it remind you to remain truthful. If confusion appears, let it remind you to remain patient. If uncertainty appears, let it remind you to continue acting justly despite incomplete knowledge. Every circumstance still contains one question that reason can answer. What is the honorable action available right now? When you answer that question faithfully, you preserve your freedom even while facing conditions you never desired. Do not mistake constant complaint for strength. Many people believe that expressing every frustration proves honesty. Yet repeated complaint often deepens suffering because it trains the mind to remain fixed upon what cannot be altered. There is an important difference between acknowledging difficulty and feeding it through continual repetition. The disciplined person recognizes pain without allowing pain to become the center of every thought. He directs his greatest attention toward the responsibilities that remain within his reach. There are moments when hardship strips away familiar comforts and leaves you feeling exposed. During these times, remember that your habits become more important than your emotions. Continue rising when your duties require it. Continue speaking honestly. Continue fulfilling promises. Continue examining your judgments before reacting. These simple practices preserve order when circumstances appear chaotic. The outer world may become uncertain, but your daily discipline provides an inner structure that hardship cannot easily destroy. One valuable exercise during difficult seasons is voluntary stillness. Before reacting to painful news or unexpected disappointment, remain silent for a few moments. Allow the first wave of emotion to settle before giving it words. Many regrettable actions begin because the mind mistakes immediate expression for necessary action. Silence grants reason time to examine what has occurred. It restores the distance needed for wiser judgment. Often the response formed after careful reflection bears little resemblance to the impulse that first demanded release. Throughout the day, remind yourself that hardship tests direction rather than destination. You are not required to know every answer immediately. You are required to continue moving according to virtue even while answers remain incomplete. A traveler crossing unfamiliar ground does not abandon every step simply because the entire path cannot yet be seen. In the same way, continue performing the next honorable action available. Character advances through faithful movement rather than perfect certainty. As evening approaches, examine not whether hardship disappeared, but whether your conduct remained worthy while hardship remained present. Ask yourself whether impatience overcame reason. Ask whether fear persuaded you to abandon justice. Ask whether frustration influenced your speech more than wisdom did. These questions matter because external events often remain unresolved at the end of the day, yet your response to them always remains available for examination and improvement. During this evening reflection, resist the temptation either to praise yourself excessively or condemn yourself without measure. Observe your conduct with honesty. Where reason prevailed, strengthen that habit through gratitude and continued practice. Where emotion gained unnecessary authority, identify the mistaken judgment that permitted it. Tomorrow offers another opportunity to correct what today revealed. Every difficult day becomes valuable when it leaves behind greater understanding. As this discipline grows, you begin noticing an unexpected change. Hardship still arrives, but panic arrives less often. Disappointment still exists, but it no longer defines your identity. Fear still speaks, yet it no longer gives final commands. You discover that calmness is not the reward for perfect circumstances. It is the result of repeatedly choosing reason whenever circumstances become imperfect. Your strength becomes quieter because it no longer depends upon dramatic victories. It rests upon steady self-government maintained through ordinary perseverance. Others may wonder why difficulties no longer shake you as they once did. They may assume your life has become easier. They do not see the real transformation. The change occurred within your judgments long before it appeared in your behavior. You stopped measuring life according to comfort. You stopped expecting certainty before acting. You stopped believing that external events possessed unlimited authority over your peace. These invisible corrections gradually produced visible steadiness. Remember also that rational courage does not isolate you from compassion. Enduring hardship with discipline does not require becoming cold toward others or indifferent to suffering. Instead, it allows you to help more wisely because your own emotions no longer overwhelm your judgment. A person ruled entirely by panic cannot guide another toward peace. A person governed by reason becomes a steady presence precisely because he refuses to surrender himself to confusion. When tomorrow presents another challenge, do not ask why difficulty has returned. Ask instead what opportunity for virtue now stands before you. Perhaps this hardship invites patience that comfort never demanded. Perhaps it requires honesty that fear once delayed. Perhaps it calls for endurance that convenience never developed. Every challenge carries within it an invitation to strengthen the part of yourself that circumstances cannot command unless you surrender it willingly. Never forget that the greatest defeat is not experiencing hardship. The greatest defeat is allowing hardship to persuade you that your principles no longer matter. Once reason is abandoned, suffering multiplies because every passing emotion begins competing for control. Preserve the government of your own mind above every external victory. Fortune may remove possessions, alter plans, or delay success, but it cannot force you to abandon wisdom, justice, courage, or moderation. Only your own consent can accomplish that. Carry this understanding into every difficult season of your life. Meet hardship without unnecessary resistance. Accept reality before deciding how to respond. Examine every judgment before allowing emotion to lead. Continue performing your duties even when recognition disappears. Protect your character more carefully than your comfort. Day after day, these practices will create an inner stability that neither success nor failure can easily disturb. You will endure not because life has become gentle, but because your reason has become stronger than the changing conditions surrounding you. That is the courage that remains when every other source of confidence has fallen away, and it is available every time you choose to govern yourself instead of surrendering to the hardship before you. Number 9. Release every false belief that steals your inner freedom. Freedom is often misunderstood because people search for it in places where it has never lived. They believe freedom arrives when circumstances become favorable, when other people finally approve of them, when every desire is satisfied, or when every obstacle disappears from their path. Yet many who possess comfort remain restless, and many who receive admiration remain deeply dependent upon the opinions of others. This should tell you something important. The prison that confines most people is not built by the world around them. It is built by the false beliefs they carry within themselves. Until those beliefs are examined and released, no change in external conditions will create lasting freedom. The mind rarely announces that it is living under false beliefs. Instead, those beliefs quietly disguise themselves as obvious truth. They become so familiar that you stop questioning them. You begin believing that your value depends upon success. You assume your peace depends upon certainty. You conclude that another person's approval determines your worth. These ideas gradually shape every decision you make. Without noticing it, you begin organizing your entire life around protecting beliefs that were never worthy of your trust. The first step toward inner freedom is therefore not changing your surroundings. It is questioning what you have accepted without examination. Every belief deserves careful attention because every belief eventually becomes action. What you repeatedly tell yourself about life quietly determines how you respond to every challenge, every disappointment, every opportunity, and every relationship. A mistaken belief does not remain harmless simply because it exists silently. It governs your conduct until reason exposes it. Consider the belief that happiness depends upon obtaining what you want. At first, this idea appears harmless. It even seems reasonable, yet observe where it leads. If your happiness depends upon outcomes beyond your complete control, then your peace becomes permanently uncertain. Every delay creates frustration. Every failure creates despair. Every unexpected change becomes a personal threat. Your emotional life begins rising and falling according to events that never belonged entirely to your authority. This is not freedom. It is dependence disguised as hope. Another false belief quietly weakens many lives. It tells you that your past mistakes define your present identity. Because you failed before, you assume you must continue failing. Because you once acted unwisely, you conclude that wisdom no longer belongs to you. This belief keeps countless people imprisoned long after the original mistake has passed. The event ends, but the judgment continues. You carry yesterday's error into today's decisions until it becomes part of the future as well. Reason refuses this burden. Every present moment still belongs to your power of choice. Yesterday may instruct you, but it does not command you. There is also the belief that comfort is always good and discomfort is always bad. This belief quietly shapes countless decisions. You avoid necessary conversations because they feel uncomfortable. You delay important responsibilities because effort requires sacrifice. You abandon discipline because convenience offers immediate relief. Yet every time comfort becomes your highest guide, your character becomes weaker. Temporary ease often steals lasting strength. Reason teaches another standard. The question is not whether an action feels pleasant. The question is whether it serves virtue. Many people also believe they must control the thoughts and behavior of others before they can remain peaceful. They spend enormous energy attempting to arrange the world according to personal preference. They become discouraged whenever another person refuses to meet expectations. Yet no amount of effort can guarantee another person's judgment, words, or choices. Every attempt to govern what does not belong to you produces frustration because it asks reality to obey impossible demands. Freedom begins when you withdraw this impossible expectation and return your attention to the only government that truly belongs to you, the government of your own mind. When morning arrives, let your first exercise be one of honest questioning. Before entering the activities of the day, ask yourself which beliefs will guide your actions if left unexamined. Do not assume every familiar thought deserves trust. Instead, ask whether each belief strengthens wisdom or strengthens dependence. Ask whether it directs your attention toward your own conduct or toward circumstances beyond your authority. This quiet examination prepares your reason before the world begins presenting distractions. Carry this same discipline into ordinary situations. When disappointment appears, do not immediately ask why life has become unfair. Ask what belief has made this disappointment so painful. Perhaps you assumed success was guaranteed. Perhaps you expected perfect treatment from imperfect people. Perhaps you believed every effort must produce immediate reward. The event itself may be difficult, but the hidden belief often multiplies its weight. Correct the belief, and your suffering becomes lighter because your judgment has become truer. The mind often clings to false beliefs because they have become familiar companions. Even painful ideas can feel comfortable simply because they are known. You may continue believing you are incapable of change because that conclusion excuses further effort. You may continue believing the world owes you constant fairness because that belief protects your pride from honest examination. These beliefs survive not because they are true, but because they spare you from responsibility. Wisdom asks more of you. It asks you to surrender comforting illusions in exchange for liberating truth. One belief, especially deserving of correction, is the belief that another person's opinion possesses authority over your character. Praise and criticism both belong to other minds. They may contain useful information, but neither determines your worth. If praise becomes necessary for confidence, then criticism will inevitably become unbearable. You will begin adjusting your conduct according to applause instead of reason. Freedom requires another foundation. Let your actions be measured first by whether they express justice, moderation, courage, and wisdom. Public approval may come or disappear, but virtue remains within your authority. Throughout the day, practice observing your reactions with curiosity instead of immediate agreement. Whenever strong emotion appears, pause and ask which belief has been challenged. Anger often reveals a belief that reality should always satisfy your expectations. Fear may reveal a belief that uncertainty is impossible to endure. Envy often exposes the belief that another person's success has diminished your own value. Every emotional disturbance becomes an opportunity for philosophical examination because emotions frequently point toward judgments waiting to be corrected. Another false belief quietly steals freedom by convincing you that your circumstances determine your identity. You begin introducing yourself through your failures, your profession, your possessions, your reputation, or your achievements, yet all these things remain vulnerable to change. If you attach your deepest identity to unstable conditions, then your sense of self becomes equally unstable. Reason teaches that your truest identity is found in your capacity to choose wisely. As long as that faculty remains available, your greatest possession has not been lost. Practice simplifying your judgments whenever life becomes confusing. Ask only what belongs to your own choice and what does not. This simple distinction removes countless unnecessary burdens. Another person's response belongs to them. Your honesty belongs to you. The outcome of every effort remains uncertain. The sincerity of your effort remains entirely yours. The future cannot be guaranteed. The present action can still be governed wisely. Each time you make this distinction, another false belief loses its influence. Do not become discouraged when old patterns of thinking return. Beliefs repeated over many years do not disappear after one moment of understanding. They fade through continual correction. Every time a familiar falsehood appears, answer it with reason instead of habit. If your mind says that failure has ruined everything, remind yourself that virtue remains possible. If your thoughts insist that approval is necessary, remind yourself that integrity requires no audience. If fear predicts permanent defeat, return your attention to the present duty waiting quietly before you. As the day continues, pay close attention to how often unnecessary comparison enters your thinking. Comparison grows from the false belief that another person's circumstances determine your own worth. You measure your progress against someone else's success and conclude that your own life has become smaller. Yet another person's fortune neither adds to nor subtracts from your capacity for virtue. Every moment spent measuring yourself against others distracts you from the only work capable of improving your life, the government of your own judgments and actions. One valuable discipline is deliberately welcoming correction. When someone honestly reveals a fault you have overlooked, resist the urge to defend yourself immediately. Instead, examine whether the observation contains truth. Pride often protects false beliefs by refusing every challenge. Humility performs the opposite task. It invites examination because it values improvement more than appearance. Every mistaken belief surrendered becomes another step toward greater freedom. As evening approaches, withdraw from distraction and review the hidden beliefs that directed your conduct throughout the day. Ask yourself which thoughts repeatedly shaped your reactions. Did you expect certainty where uncertainty naturally exists? Did you demand comfort instead of courage? Did you seek approval more eagerly than integrity? Did you assume circumstances possessed greater authority than your own reason? This evening reflection gradually uncovers patterns that remain invisible during hurried activity. Self-knowledge grows whenever your judgments become clearer. Do not end this examination with regret alone. Replace each mistaken belief with a wiser one before sleep arrives. If you believed external success determined your worth, Remind yourself that only your own choices reveal your character. If you believed hardship destroyed peace, remember that peace depends upon disciplined judgment rather than favorable events. If you believed another person's actions controlled your happiness, return your attention to your own responsibility for choosing wisely tomorrow. Over time, these corrections begin changing your entire experience of life. Situations that once produced immediate frustration lose much of their power because the beliefs supporting that frustration have weakened. Praise no longer intoxicates you because your value no longer depends upon it. Criticism no longer crushes you because your conscience has become a more reliable guide than public opinion. Uncertainty becomes easier to bear because you no longer demand complete control over outcomes before acting with courage. This transformation is quiet rather than dramatic. Others may notice greater calmness without understanding its source. They see steadier behavior, but they do not witness the deeper work taking place inside your mind. They do not see each false belief being questioned before it shapes another decision. They do not hear the conversations where reason gently corrects old habits of thought. Yet these invisible victories create the visible strength that others eventually recognize. Remember that every false belief asks you to surrender part of your freedom. It tells you that your peace depends upon something outside your own character. It persuades you to hand authority over your inner life to changing circumstances, uncertain outcomes, or unstable opinions. Refuse every invitation that leads away from self-government. Freedom belongs to the person who places reason above illusion and virtue above every passing advantage. When tomorrow begins, carry one determination into the day. Refuse to believe every thought simply because it appears inside your own mind. Test each judgment before accepting it. Ask whether it strengthens courage or fear. Ask whether it serves wisdom or dependence. Ask whether it directs you toward responsibility or toward blame. This careful examination gradually removes the chains created by untested assumptions. Your liberation will not arrive through perfect circumstances. It will arrive through truthful judgment. It will appear every time you release another belief that has quietly governed you without permission. It will grow stronger each time you return your attention from what cannot be controlled to what remains entirely within your power. Day after day, this practice reshapes your mind until your peace no longer depends upon fortune, recognition, comfort, or certainty. It rests instead upon the steady government of your own reason. This is the freedom that cannot be granted by another person and cannot be stolen by changing events. It belongs to the individual who has learned to separate truth from illusion and virtue from false desire. Such a person still encounters difficulty, disappointment, and uncertainty, yet none of these experiences possesses the authority to rule the soul. The false beliefs have been released. Reason has resumed its rightful place. The mind no longer serves passing appearances, but lives according to what is enduring, honorable, and fully within its own command. Number 10. Live each day proving your worth through virtuous action alone. You spend much of your life waiting for something outside you to confirm your worth. You wait for recognition to validate your effort. You wait for success to justify your discipline. You wait for others to acknowledge what you already suspect about yourself. In doing so, you quietly surrender authority over your own judgment. You place your value into hands that do not belong to you. Then you wonder why your sense of self rises and falls with every external change. A life built on external approval is a life constantly at risk of collapse. There is another way to live, but it demands something most people avoid. It demands that you separate your worth from everything that is not under your rational control. Your worth does not come from outcomes. It does not come from praise. It does not come from wealth, status, or recognition. All of these belong to the shifting world of external events. They arrive and leave without asking permission. If your identity depends upon them, then your identity will never be stable. It will move with every change of circumstance. Your worth is measured in one place only. It is measured in your choices, not the results of your choices, but the choices themselves. Whether you act with honesty when deception would be easier, whether you remain just when injustice would benefit you, whether you choose restraint when excess tempts you, whether you think clearly when emotion invites distortion. These decisions belong entirely to your control. Nothing outside you can take them away unless you surrender them willingly. Most suffering begins when people forget this distinction. They confuse evaluation with virtue. They believe that being praised makes them good and being criticized makes them lesser. They assume that success proves wisdom and failure proves inadequacy. Yet none of these judgments originate from reason. They originate from dependence on external opinion. Once this dependence takes hold, the mind begins performing for approval instead of acting according to principle. Life becomes a constant performance instead of a practice in virtue. If you want to reclaim your inner freedom, you must stop asking whether your actions will be admired and start asking whether they are right. This shift seems small, but it changes everything. It moves your attention away from outcomes you cannot control and places it on conduct you can govern completely. When you act from this foundation, your peace no longer depends on how others respond. It depends on whether you remain faithful to reason in each moment. Begin each morning with this simple reminder. Today will contain situations where your character is tested. Some will be obvious, others will appear ordinary. You will be tempted to react quickly instead of thoughtfully. You will be invited to chase comfort instead of duty. You will be encouraged to measure yourself by standards that have nothing to do with virtue. Prepare yourself in advance to meet these moments with clarity. Decide before the day begins that your worth will not be negotiated with circumstances. This preparation is not abstract thinking, it is practical discipline. It means that before you speak, you examine your intention. Before you act, you examine your judgment. Before you react, you pause long enough to ask whether reason approves. This brief moment of examination is where freedom is preserved. Without it, impulse governs your life. With it, you remain the author of your conduct. Throughout the day, observe how often your mind seeks validation. You may notice a subtle desire for recognition when you complete a task. You may feel frustration when your efforts are overlooked. You may experience disappointment when your actions are misunderstood. These reactions reveal a hidden belief that worth must be confirmed by others. Replace this belief with a clearer one. Your worth is not something granted by response. It is something expressed through action. When you feel the urge to complain, examine it closely. Complaint often disguises itself as honesty, but it frequently serves another purpose. It shifts attention away from responsibility and toward external blame. It suggests that peace would return if only circumstances changed. Yet, even if circumstances changed, the habit of complaint would remain. The disciplined mind does not build identity upon reaction. It builds identity upon conduct. There will be moments when your effort produces no visible reward. You will act correctly and receive no recognition. You will choose honesty and gain no advantage. You will remain disciplined and see no immediate benefit. These moments are not failures of your effort. They are tests of whether your commitment depends upon outcomes or principles. If you require reward to continue acting well, then you are not yet free. If you continue acting well without reward, you are beginning to understand freedom. You must also become aware of how quickly the mind judges itself through comparison. You look at others and measure your progress against their appearance of success. This comparison creates unnecessary disturbance because it focuses on what is not yours to control. Another person's path does not determine your value. Their timing does not define your progress. Their recognition does not limit your capacity for virtue. Comparison steals attention from the only work that truly belongs to you, the refinement of your own judgment and action. When hardship appears, the question is never whether it threatens your worth. Hardship has no authority over that. The question is whether you will meet it with discipline or surrender it to impulse. A difficult situation does not diminish your character. Your response to it reveals your character. This is why external conditions can never define you unless you abandon internal governance. Train yourself to act from principle even when no one is watching. This is where true integrity is formed. When private conduct aligns with public conduct, the mind becomes unified. There is no separation between appearance and reality. You stop managing impressions and start living according to reason. The need for approval weakens because you no longer depend on it for confirmation of your value. As you continue this practice, you will notice a shift in how you experience daily life. Actions that once required effort begin feeling natural because they align with your chosen identity. You are no longer forcing yourself to behave well in isolated moments. You are consistently expressing a way of living grounded in virtue. Discipline becomes less of a struggle and more of a direction. Still, you must remain alert. The mind often attempts to reclaim old habits by offering subtle justifications. It will suggest that small compromises do not matter. It will argue that exceptions are harmless. It will insist that one moment of weakness will not affect your character. These thoughts are persuasive only when they go unexamined. The disciplined person refuses to accept them without scrutiny. Every compromise begins with a justification that was not questioned. At midday, pause briefly and review your conduct. Ask whether your actions today reflect reason or impulse. Ask whether you have acted according to virtue or according to convenience. This simple reflection prevents accumulation of unnoticed deviation. It keeps your attention aligned with your principles instead of drifting into unconscious habit. If you discover moments where you acted poorly, do not fall into despair or self-accusation. Such reactions do not improve character. Instead, identify the judgment that led to the action. Correct the judgment, not just the behavior. A corrected understanding prevents repetition. A repeated mistake without examination continues its influence. Improvement comes through clarity, not emotional punishment. In relationships, this approach brings steadiness. You stop seeking validation through others and begin offering consistency instead. You listen more carefully because your attention is not consumed by self-justification. You respond more calmly because your value is no longer threatened by disagreement. You act more fairly because your standard is internal rather than reactive. Virtue becomes the foundation of connection rather than approval or convenience. As evening arrives, withdraw from external demands and examine your day with honesty. Review moments where you acted with clarity and moments where you surrendered to impulse. Do not distort either. Observe them as facts about your current level of discipline. This reflection is not for judgment in the emotional sense. It is for understanding the condition of your inner life so that tomorrow may be guided more wisely. Ask yourself a simple question during this reflection. Did I live today as if my worth depended on external approval, or did I live as if it depended on virtuous action alone? This question reveals the true direction of your life. It exposes whether you are governed by external validation or by internal principle. From this awareness, correction becomes possible. Over time, something remarkable occurs. You begin to experience a form of stability that does not depend on changing circumstances. You no longer rise and fall with praise or criticism. You no longer measure yourself by comparison. You no longer define your life by outcomes beyond your control. Instead, your attention remains anchored in conduct. You recognize that every day provides the same opportunity not to prove superiority, but to act according to reason with consistency. This consistency becomes your true identity, Not how others describe you, but how you choose to act when no description matters. Not what you achieve, but how you behave while pursuing it. Not what you receive from the world, but what you contribute through disciplined action. This is the only measure that remains stable because it belongs entirely to you. When this understanding takes root, the need to prove yourself externally begins to fade. You stop performing for approval. You stop chasing validation. You stop defining worth through outcomes. Instead, you live each day as an opportunity to express virtue clearly and without hesitation. Worth is no longer something you seek. It becomes something you practice. This is the final freedom available to a rational mind. A life no longer governed by external judgment, but guided by consistent inner discipline. A life where every action is an expression of reason, every decision a reflection of character, and every moment an opportunity to live in alignment with what is right. In such a life, worth is not proven to others. It is lived through action alone, and nothing external can increase it or take it away.